Chapter 22. It was nice, being back in Konoha, Tayuya decided, even if Tsunade was still probably trying to dent her head for going to Orochimaru. She didn't really feel any love for the village before, but now, she had her home here, her clan and Naruto. Speaking, well, thinking off, where was he? She turned around just as he shoved something into her face. It smelled delicious. She reached out to take it, but he drew it away. Hey, she exclaimed in affront, but smiled like an idiot. He grinned at her. You want it, you gotta take it from me. Oh, I so will. He laughed as he ran from her, weaving through the crowd of startled civilians. None of them even managed to catch a glimpse of them. They passed Tsunade, who they had left behind before, and she tried to grab at them. Of course, she missed. Get back here. You have a report to turn in, she hollered after them but didn't give chase. Tayuya had ignored her anyways. Naruto was the one who would have to write that. He was clan head after all. She turned a corner and collided face first with him, throwing both of them to the ground. Naruto had enough brain left to hold what just had to be a cinnamon bun aloft and not drop it. She straddled him now, trying to snatch it away before they even hit the ground. Mine, she shouted triumphantly and pulled, but Naruto didn't let go. She scowled at him. He looked almost oddly at her. It's not that easy, Tayo. His gaze unsettled her. What do you want? Kiss me. Now she grinned. And if I don't? Then you won't get the bun? She frowned playfully, tugging a bit at the pastry before sighing. Fine. Naruto sat up fast, almost colliding with her, before he more or less devoured her lips with ravenous hunger. Tayuya almost forgot about the cinnamon bun, but even as he left it in her grasp to put his hand in her hair while the other squeezed her closer, she found that the cinnamon bun could wait. She moaned into his mouth and threw both arms around his neck to get more of him, more of his lips, more of his taste, more of his warmth. They had to break apart eventually, both breathing hard as Tayuya leaned her forehead against his. Satisfied? She asked between deep gasps for air. No, he growled, and Tayuya felt her longing for him grow immensely. But we need to hurry or they will start our own wedding without us. She ground her hips against him, seeking the sweet friction it brought. Hell if I care, she breathed, kissing his jawline. Though, she really wanted to get married now and put another level on her bond to Naruto. He grinned and stood up, but Tayuya kept her legs wrapped around him. You are driving me crazy, he groaned. Oh yeah? Can't say much about crazy, but you are hard. And whose fault is that? He whispered against her ear. Tayuya shrugged, letting go off him. I wonder. Straightening her shirt, she wondered if their wedding cake would be made of chocolate. Well, she would find out soon enough, but they better know. No chocolate cake, no wedding. Naruto spoke again when she was almost out off the alley they had gotten themselves into. I love you, you know? She halted mid-step, dropping the cinnamon roll. Slowly, carefully she turned to look at him. There was no goofy smile, no uneasy expression, no embarrassment, no regret. Just this small smile adorned his lips, and her heart either stopped or just beat too fast to feel anymore. But Tayuya took a step in his direction. And another. And a third when she noticed she was crying. Huh, she made, voice so weak, so confused. She wiped them away, but they just kept spilling and she didn't know why. His hand rested on her cheek, wiping away her tears. She looked up and saw him cry as well. Carefully she reached out and did like he had done, wiping the tears away. His smile widened a bit and he used his other hand to draw her closer. I love you, he said again, and before she could try and choke out a response, he kissed her and Tayuya poured all the feelings into it instead. She never mourned the lost cinnamon roll. In fact, she forgot she even had it. Why is everything in red? She wondered aloud when they entered the compound after a few detours that involved heated kissing and hands in the other's pants. She may also have scarred some boy for life, flashing him like that. Boys should be grateful. Not that he would see something hotter than her anytime soon. Isn't the clan's emblem white? No idea, Naruto responded before sneakily squeezing her butt. Again. He now did that whenever no one looked. Not that it bothered her, not at all. Geez, it was driving her mad, though. Tayuya decided to get back at him. So, she grabbed his dick. Through his pants, at least, but she didn't bother doing it unseen. If you want to have this wedding with pants on, you better get a grip on yourself, before I get one on you. It wasn't a serious threat because if he grabbed at her one more time she would devour him then and there. His confession had made her very horny. Horny enough to warrant new panties. Nah, she would go without. They would get in the way anyways. He groaned, twitching in her hand. Fine, fine, he gasped, earning a pleased grin from Tayuya. Don't be hasty now. She snorted. You were the one fondling me. Yeah, but your ass just screams for my attention. So does your dick, she countered. Gods, I want to fuck you so bad. Right back at you. If there is no chocolate cake, we fuck, alright? Deal? Good. Ehem. Someone loudly cleared their throat besides them, just before their lips would have met. Tayuya made an annoyed noise but turned anyways, only to be pulled back into a kiss despite her honest effort not to snog him. Ehem, it came again but they ignored it. Would you two stop it already? A voice whined, that definitely belonged to Karen. The guests will arrive soon and we can't have them see you shag in the yard. Tayuya reluctantly parted from Naruto. I bet you 100 Ryo that we can. You were ready to cry. Tayuya laughed while Karen rolled her eyes. You almost messed up the while ordeal, she said, sniffing primly. Tsunade was about ready to kill. Me of all people. If you hadn't just messed up Orochimaru, she would have tried to kill you. Tayuya waved a hand dismissively. Details. Now, where was I? That's a lot of people, she told him as they watched the at least 100 guests converse and socialize on the compound grounds. Naruto nodded, fiddling with the red sash that was supposed to be wrapped around his waist. Most of the Hyuga are here, the Aburame, the Nara and the Yamanaka. The Akimichi are responsible for the catering. Is there chocolate cake? He chuckled. Hell yeah, there is. She grinned. At least one reason to be here. Hey, he exclaimed in mock offense and lightly shoved her shoulder. She caught his hand before he could pull it back. So, officially marrying, huh? Naruto nodded, squeezing her hand. Well, yeah. In theory, we are already officially married. This is just a display. A useless one, now that Madara emerged, though. No shit, Tayuya snorted. Still, neither he nor her were about to end this whole debacle. Both had wanted a family, Naruto more so than Tayuya, but even she couldn't deny that getting settled like that, ceremony and all, was something she wouldn't ever have dreamed about back when Orochimaru had her under his thumb. Now, even without dream, it was like a dream come true. Gaara. Naruto called out, waving his red-haired friend over to him. How was the trip? Followed by his siblings, the Kazekage made his way over to the veranda he and Tayuya were sitting on. We barely were a day in Suna, you know? But it was fine, no trouble on the way. He bowed his head to Tayuya. My congratulations to the bride. Both siblings gave her the same sentiment, though Naruto could have sworn that Temari was glaring at her. Tayuya waved a hand dismissively. I know. It's fine. You'd better pity her, a voice called from behind the Kazekage and his siblings, one that carried a lot of good humor, but Naruto could sense the underlying threat all the same. Kami above. He hadn't told Sakura. Said girl was smiling at them, a smile that greatly unsettled both of them. Tayuya leaned over to him and whispered, will she try to kill us? Naruto slowly shook his head. I don't think so, he said, at least, not yet. And then maybe just me. Tayuya huffed and gripped his hand. Oh yeah? Well she can't have you. She grinned. Not until you fucked me senseless, that is. Temari, who had been close enough to hear her, blushed and gave them a scandalized look. As Sakura approached them, with Ino in tow, Kankuro was still staring wide-eyed at her and Gaara had to drag him away as he excused himself to greet the other guests. So, Sakura began, you are the husband, huh? She looked none too pleased with the way she found out about this. Obviously, Tayuya snorted and Naruto managed to catch her hand before she could grab his dick again. She showed him her tongue but kept his hand in hers. Yeah, Naruto began sheepishly, so it appears. And why have I not heard of this until this morning? Sakura demanded loudly. It was an A-rank secret? Ino threw in, no one was supposed to know. Sakura glared at her. So you did know? Ino backed away. It was a clan secret, she cried before turning tail and fleeing in the direction of the rest of her clan that was gathering of the building. Sakura sighed in defeat before pouting at him. He almost laughed and Tayuya said, shouldn't do that, Pinky. Gives you wrinkles? I'm not that old. Sakura fired back. I'll tell you that in 30 years when I don't look a day over 25 and you have to bath in anti-aging cream. You little dash. Who are you calling little? Naruto could have sworn that he had imagined this day going along far easier than this. The ceremony will begin soon. Shizune called out over the courtyard. Please find yourselves a place in the main building's main hall. As soon as she had finished her sentence, she scurried back into said building to get up into the room where Naruto and Tayuya were supposed to wait for the procedure to begin. She really hoped that they didn't suddenly decided to accelerate it all to the honeymoon already, but Karen and Sari were up there as well so it couldn't be that bad. She thought. You aren't even dressed yet? Shizune shrieked. In fact, Tayuya wasn't dressed at all. Sari was trying to braid Tayuya's far too long hair while Karen tried to convince her of the necessity to wear her robes. Naruto, reclining in a chair not far from them, was watching them all in some sort of amusement. And, obviously, he was leering at Tayuya. Shizune threw her sandal at him. Help them. We have not even 10 minutes, she ordered. Naruto laughed but rose all the same. He walked over to his wife, soon-to-be wife, stupid title, and hugged her from behind. Sari silently protested and slammed a note that read some profanities onto Naruto's shoulder. He whispered into her ear. "Wear the robes, Tayu. For me. If only so that I can slowly peel them off your wonderful skin and kiss every inch of it, worship every spot that drives you crazy." Shizun had the decency to blush, but Karen merely rolled her eyes and held out the robes once more. "Get in them already." Now Tayuya readily agreed. "You have 8 minutes." Shizun reminded them and hurried down into the hall. "How are they?" Tsunade asked, standing up on the small platform where she would officiate the wedding. Shizun huffed. "Tayuya was still naked when I looked inside the room." "Sages have mercy," Tsunade moaned. "Will this end in a fiasco?" "I don't think so," Shizun hummed. "They really want this." The present guests quieted down when Karen and Sari entered the room, dressed in white with a red sash around their waists. They scurried up the aisle and stood across from Tsunade, representing the Uzumaki clan in this union. Usually the clan head would take this position, but, obviously, Naruto was otherwise occupied. Mainly with being the groom. Tsunade briefly smiled at the two cousins before she surveyed the guests once more. She was almost surprised to see Hinata down there, who had the biggest of crushes on Naruto. Tsunade sincerely hoped that she could be happy for Naruto and see that he was quite taken. Niji was standing at her side, a ring suspiciously displayed on his left ring finger. The Hokage's eyes widened impeccably when she spotted the very same ring on Tenten, who stood right there with him. Hayashi had obviously gotten control over his clan. As a matter of fact, Tsunade could see none of the elders in attendance. Here's hoping that she didn't need to file them as deceased. Sakura was talking quietly with Ino, both standing in the row behind Inoichi and the rest of the Yamanaka clan. If her apprentice was still pissed that she hadn't known about the wedding, she couldn't see it in her face anymore. Kiba, who stood beside his sister, was trying to sneak glances at Hinata. Well, sure, if the idiot got a grip already he wouldn't be too bad for the Hyuga heiress. Apparently Hayashi had reinstated her. If her father approved, of course. Shino and the rest of his clan stood a bit separated from the rest of the Konoha group, mostly because they always had their bugs moved in their immediate vicinity. That was also the reason they were placed at the very left of the hall, while all guests from outside the village were at the right side. Curiously enough, Sai was also on the right side, at the very back. He sat in front of a canvas, so Tsunade guessed that he deemed the angle soft sight better from over there. Just as she had finished thought, Sai packed up and moved to the left, where he sat down once more and observed the stage only to move to the right side again shortly afterwards. Shizun excused herself from her side and moved to stand besides the big double door through which Naruto and Tayuya would, hopefully, enter in about 2 minutes. Her eyes fell on the other Kage and Tsunade had to admit that she had almost inhaled her cup of tea, cup included, when she heard that the Tsuchikage would come with his granddaughter. Those two were seated on the very right of the first row. Kuratsuchi looked rather uneasy there, among all these Konoha shinobi, but her grandfather didn't seem half as tense. He merely seemed annoyed that the Raikage was constantly talking to either him or his younger brother, Killer Bee. The Mizukage was pouting like there was no tomorrow and Tsunade dearly hoped that Tayuya wouldn't blow a gasket because of that. Gaara was sitting in the chair at the aisle at the very front, for he was there to present Naruto's family. The Uzumaki had told her that usually she would have been the first choice, but, because she had to officiate the whole thing, it was Gaara who would take the part. What surprised her, and the girl in question, to no end, was that Tayuya had elected Temari as her family member for this occasion. "You are the only one aside from Lover Boy that can claim to have beat me," she had explained, "so you better be fucking grateful." Well, in the end Temari accepted because Gaara had asked her to. Kakashi was the poor fool that was tasked with bearing the rings and delivering a speech in Naruto's honor. Poor he was, because the bastard wasn't even there yet. She signaled for Yugao and almost yelped when the bridesmaid that had been sitting right beside her, stood up. "Yes, milady?" she asked while Tsunade took a calming breath. "I would have asked you to go look for Kakashi, but I suppose you are already occupied." Tsunade shook her head. "When did you get here?" Yugao bowed her head. "I have been here ever since you ordered me into the Uzumaki clan service." Oh. Well, she had done that. Right, but you wouldn't perhaps know where Kakashi is? Right here. Tsunade did yelp this time as the man spoke from behind her. "Sages, Kakashi. Why did you just appear behind me?" Kakashi, lords above, below, and in the first seating row. Was he unmasked? Inclined his head lazily. "I have been here all day." He lifted a cushion into her field of vision. "I am here with the rings, after all." 2 rings of black metal with a red crystal in shape of the Uzumaki swirl glint darkly in the sunlight. Tsunade blinked at the man. "Your mask." He shrugged and for the very first time Tsunade saw his thin lips stretch into a tight smile. I was not allowed to wear it. He glanced at Karen. The clan would have beheaded me. Yugao stifled a snort. Tsunade shook her head. This could actually go off without a hitch, she mumbled to herself. In that moment, the door swung open. The entire hall was silent and Naruto felt as proud as he was nervous. He glanced at Tayuya, who he was leading by the hand into the room. She was smiling so widely that it just had to hurt. Any wider and it would look crazy. Well, maybe she was crazy. Crazy for loving him. But then again he was guilty of the same, being crazy enough to love her. Lord Uzumaki and the Lady Tayuya Uzumaki. Shizen announced loudly besides them and Naruto almost forgot that that was his cue to start walking. He had to drag Tayuya forward, who appeared distinctively uncomfortable, being scrutinized by just about 100 people. He squeezed her hand and he could feel her relax a little. He caught Hinata's eye when they passed the Hyuga clan and she smiled brightly at him, apparently genuinely happy for them. Which was a pleasant surprise, really, because usually, when he walked through a crowd, he could feel them tense as if he would maul them any second now. As if Tayuya was far more likely to do that. And then he would have to love her until she calmed down. That, Naruto decided, may not even be the worst outcome for this. What kind of amazed him was the brown-haired girl with a cat on her shoulder that was staring at Kiba like he was something incredibly tasty. They reached the 3 steps that led up to Tsunade and he almost missed the first one. Tayuya snorted besides him but almost missed the second one. When they both laughed they nearly tripped over the third. He could see Tsunade roll her eyes and, holy shit. Kakashi wasn't wearing his mask. Karen glared at him from where she stood while Sari was bent over holding her tummy. Had her throat allowed it, she would probably be laughing loudly. Gaara came up besides him and led him to stand with Karen, who immediately stepped on his toes, while Temari led Tayuya to stand with Shizune. He glared mildly at Karen as Tsunade cleared her throat. We have gathered here today, she spoke loudly, to witness the union of one Naruto Uzumaki, clan head of the Uzumaki, and Tayuya Uzumaki in marriage. While she spoke, Kakashi stepped in between them with the rings. They were traditionally a dark color so they wouldn't glint in the light and give away their position. They were ninja after all. Tsunade was talking about the values of marriage, about the beauty of it, but all the beauty Naruto could admire then was Tayuya's grin of anticipation. He could see her bounce a little as her eyes flickered from the rings to him. Her hair was done in one long, thick braid that fell down over her shoulder. She was constantly fiddling with it at this point. Her robes were the same shade of red as her hair, which had apparently taken forever to find so that it wouldn't clash with each other. In the purple sash she wore, which she said symbolized her past, was the flute he had gifted her. Despite all the urging from Shizune, Karen and even Ino, Tayuya wore no makeup, nothing at all. Her lashes were long enough already and her pale skin could, in his opinion, only ever be blemished by the array of beauty products they wanted to put on her. Traditionally, as Tsunade had insisted, she wore her armor under the robe, which was clearly visible underneath her throat with the Uzumaki swirl on display. He himself was dressed, sharply, he would have called it. A black robe with deep red accents and a sash in dark royal blue. He thought it looked strange but Shizune had assured him that this was custom. He, too, wore his chest armor to display, just like Tayuya. His hair had been slicked back, which felt and looked equally strange. Tayuya had eyed him carefully before bringing a single lock out of the carefully crafted hairstyle to dangle into his face. He could see how Shizune was glaring at the lock of stray hair. And as a sign of their union, they will now exchange the rings. Gaara had to elbow him twice before he realized that he had to take the ring. The same had apparently happened between Tayuya and Temari, because his wife was glaring balefully at the Kazekage's sister. He took a heavy step forward and, for a brief second, was confused as to which ring to take. The one on his side? On Tayuya's side? Thankfully, Tayuya made the decision for him as she took the one on her side. Evidently, it had been the wrong one, because he could see Shizune roll her eyes and almost felt how Tsunade sighed. Kakashi merely smiled encouragingly. He looked so normal without the mask. Come on, put the ring on her finger, Gaara whispered from besides him. Almost laughing sheepishly, he gently took the hand Tayuya held out for him. Wait, that was the wrong one. He chuckled quietly and reached for her other hand. Tayuya reddened a bit but acted as if nothing had been wrong. Well, she wouldn't have admitted anything in the first place, she was far too proud for that. The ring fit perfectly and he marveled at the way it stood out against her pale skin. When Tayuya slid the ring on his finger, he noticed how Kakashi was standing there, waiting with a long white cloth in hand, emblazoned with the Uzumaki swirl in red. Naruto didn't understand why they changed all the colors. The swirl was white for fuck's sake. He was already quoting Tayuya in his head. If Naruto remembered correctly, which he dearly hoped by now, they would hold hands while Gaara and Temari would tie the literal knot with the cloth. Then Kakashi would say a few words and Tsunade would declare them officially married. Again. Tayuya grasped his hand in her own and they watched as their hands disappeared underneath the white cloth. They had managed to tie it in a way that the Uzumaki swirl was now displayed to the guests with the knot resting atop it. How did Gaara know how to tie these? Kakashi loudly cleared his throat, but Naruto was a bit busy with admiring the way Tayuya's hair glinted in the light of the sun that fell in one of the windows. Tayuya seemed engrossed with the ring on her finger but suddenly yelped when Temari kicked her foot. The vows, Kakashi quietly reminded them. These vows were, unlike in a civilian wedding, more or less a pledge to the other in all sorts of situations. Custom dictated that the woman starts, so Tayuya took a deep breath and tried not to scowl. He could clearly see her struggle with that. She opened her mouth only to pause and close it again. Evidently she forgot the text she should now recite and Naruto fought down the urge to laugh. "Shut up," she hissed, kicking at his shin. "Damn it, that hurt," he mumbled back, rubbing his abused shin at his other leg. "As if you remembered the stupid vow." Tayuya huffed. "Fucking old school shit. Can't I just kiss you already?" "Yeah." Naruto agreed enthusiastically. "Kami, damn it, why did he let them plan the wedding?" He turned to Tsunade, whose eyebrows were twitching violently, probably the first signs of a seizure. "Can't we just kiss and be done with it?" he asked her. Tsunade exhaled slowly, visibly doing her best not to punch the Uzumaki clan head in front of the entire village. "Gods be damned," she hissed under her breath. "You will be the death of me," she growled at them. Tayuya merely scoffed. There were murmurs rising in volume amidst the guests when Tsunade loudly cleared her throat to regain their attention. Before these witnesses, before their families and allies, before the Hokage and all of these guests, Lord Naruto Uzumaki and Lady Tayuya Uzumaki hereby swear dash. Yeah, get on with it." Tayuya hissed impatiently, earning a harsh glare from both Tsunade and Shizune. Kakashi merely rolled his eyes. "Ehem, she begins anew. They swear to love and live for each other, to fight and die at each other's side." Tayuya was about to nag again but Temari pinched her side, causing her to squeak in surprise. "May their family ever prosper and their clan grow ever stronger. The union be sealed with a O for the love of Kami." Of course, Tayuya did not wait until Tsunade had finished her carefully prepared speech and it seemed that neither Kakashi would get to show off his hip and cool version of the groom's father's speech, because they were already kissing each other. Heatedly. In fact, Tayuya's hands were already on their way under his armor. Now that was a wedding he could live with. "Have some goddamned restraint, Arthur, I mean, Naruto." Karen yelled at them while Sari was discreetly retreating from the stage to wheeze madly where no one could see her. Gaara sighed loudly and had to take a step back when Tayuya toppled Naruto over, devouring his mouth more than she was kissing it. Temari looked at them with a mixture of bewilderment and embarrassment, inching away from them to get out of the spotlight. Kakashi just sighed happily. "Ah, youth. Youth," was the enthusiastic response that came from somewhere outside, where Lee and Guy were on guard detail. Tsunade was gaping at them, looking back and forth between the two of them and the guests, most of them shell-shocked at such blatant display of what could have been fertility, but was nothing short of lust. Shizune cooed at them when their lips first met, but the more heated it got, the more ashamed she was to look and eventually tried to get Tsunade to end the debacle before anyone would get to see naked skin. Ino hummed loudly beside Sakura. "I didn't know you could kiss like that." "Yeah," Sakura agreed, "but, is it supposed to be like that?" Between Kiba's wolf whistling and the general exclamations of offense in the hall, no one heard Tayuya moan, "You're going to put your dick in me now, lover boy." Well, no one short of those who were still on stage. Shizune had to be caught by Kakashi as she fainted dead away and even Gaara allowed his eyebrows to rise. "Get to your damn room." Tsunade hollered, grabbing both of them by the collar before chucking them towards the back door of the hall, where Sari was rolling on the floor, wheezing and gasping as she laughed harder than she ever had. That was a wedding. Well, that was an unconventional wedding, the Raikage commented as Tsunade descended from the stage. She gave him a sour look. "Please, let's forget this ever happened." The Tsuchikage, who floated in the air behind snorted. "The Uzumaki don't make much of traditions these days, do they?" There wasn't much tradition left, Karen hissed as she walked down beside Tsunade, after the village was destroyed. The old fence-sitter grumbled something inaudible, which caused his granddaughter to elbow him. "Grandfather," she hissed. "My apologies," the man pressed through gritted teeth. Tsunade was pleasantly surprised that young Kuratsuchi had at least some social grace. "Anyways," she said, "there are matters I have to attend now." "That wouldn't happen to have something to do with old Danzo?" asked casually. Of course he would know. "Yes," she answered as if she weren't surprised. The old fool tried to start a riot by accusing me of some horrendous bullshit. She pulled a scroll from her bosom, tried to get it forwarded before he arrived in Konoha. Hinata Hyuga spotted the messenger bird and she and her team intercepted it. Shook his head. I never liked the old warmonger. More extreme than my father, that one. He's rotting in a cell now, so good riddance, Tsunade said, shrugging. You know, matters can wait. I have some sake here that cannot. The Raikage bellowed a laugh. Oh woman. Our relations could skyrocket of this alone. Drink me under the next table and I'll agree to the taxes on your good damn wood once we dealt with Madara. There. Sake was simply the best thing ever, she just knew it. She only ever realized they were in their room when her bare back suddenly hit the soft duvet. She had lost her armor in the courtyard and her sash in the ceremony hall before that. Her robes left her somewhere on the stairs and she never wore any undergarments in the first place. She just knew that she wouldn't need them. Naruto was still kissing her and she clawed listlessly at the hem of his shirt and tried to get him out of the damn armor. She needed to feel his skin against hers, his warmth against her. She was melting between his hands, every muscle jumped and relaxed under his fingers, every inch of skin was on fire under his lips, and once he met her burning core she almost came undone then and there, barely 5 minutes after they had entered the room. She was quivering beneath him, the strength had left her limbs and all she could do was sigh and groan his name. It took her minutes to regain her breath and once she opened her eyes again, Naruto's smug grin was the first thing she saw. She huffed and put her forehead against his. I'm going to wipe that grin of your face, lover boy, she breathed and rolled the two of them over so that she could straddle him. And she did indeed wipe the grin of his face, though licked and kissed would have been more accurate. His voice was raspy, gravely and deep and it vibrated through her entire body. She let her fingers caress the outlines of his toned chest, his chiseled stomach and the V-shape of his pelvis. Every groan, every time he whispered her name like a prayer, she felt her body, her very core, hum in joy. Tayuya was never body shy, the years spent as a lab rat had assured that. Her feelings had confused the living daylight out of her in the beginning, but now that she felt comfortable with it, she enjoyed every second of it. She never considered herself very beautiful, her curves were there but not exactly voluptuous. She was all hardwired muscle and scarred skin. But Naruto looked at her as if she was the most beautiful thing in the world. The thought felt almost ludicrous, but when he looked at her like this, she'd almost believe it. Ready, he breathed into her ear. She merely groaned into his neck, biting down on a spot of already bruised skin. Tayuya wasn't sure if she was still a virgin. In fact, she was pretty sure that Kabuto had his sick fun with her more than once when she had been out cold. Then again, he didn't seem to have something like a libido. Well, it didn't matter now. In fact, nothing so much as existed around her when Naruto kissed her. She had been wet, of course, so Naruto easily slid into her and as he did, Tayuya almost passed out. There was a sense of discomfort but it was outweighed by the pure bliss, the feeling of wholeness that rang throughout her whole body. She groaned his name, loudly, deeply and dug her nails into his shoulders and he hadn't even moved yet. He reached spots that Tayuya didn't imagine reachable and even as he merely twitched inside of her, her toes curled and bright spots invaded her vision. Are you all right? He asked, his voice heavy with desire and she could hear the strain in his voice. Shit, she moaned, trying to regain her bearings, you almost knocked me out there. He laughed and pulled her even closer, going even deeper and she moaned loudly. Can I be proud of that? Make me pass out and you may, lover boy, she growled, kissing him roughly. And barely 30 seconds later, Naruto almost got her to faint. And while she didn't pass out, she screamed as she came undone. She was still straddling him, though was now more or less listlessly lying atop him. You take over, she whispered, I think my legs gave out. He sat up with her, kissing her senseless for what had to be 2 minutes straight before laying her down on the bed. Tayuya had a lot of experience with pain, physically and psychologically, but the actual physical connection to Naruto, the knowledge that they were now truly one, it seemed to exceed her sensory limits by 1,000-fold. The feeling was too intense to describe and no words she knew felt worthy of the ecstasy she felt when Naruto loved her. But even then she managed to get used to it, which made it no less wonderful, and after her world had doubled over for the third time, she decided to take the lead. Naruto was muttering prayers, mostly her name, so that he would prevent himself from ending things too early as she loomed over him, grinding her hips into him and savoring every inch of it she could get, making every muscle jump and flex with but her fingers. Naruto had multiple bruises on his neck, his chest, and even his groin. If she'd put more effort into it, he'd look like he had been in a fight. At some point she lost her sense of time, the only constants she had were their groaning and moaning, the feeling of him filling her so perfectly and the ever-increasing euphoria that seemed to grow with every second they were joined. But it seemed that even the body of an Uzumaki had a limit and, most surprisingly, it was her limit they reached first. Her hips wouldn't stop quacking and she barely got a coherent word out when she simply laid down on the mattress and let the cool night air hit her bare body. She didn't think she had ever been that exhausted before, nothing compared to the utter lack of strength she experienced then. She curled up against Naruto as he laid down behind her. "You," she breathed shakily, "are a menace, lover boy." He didn't laugh, apparently also quite spent, if the feeling in between her legs was any indication. "Good thing there were seals for that." "You as well," he rasped, "anyone but me might have died." She grasped his hand, hers still shaking slightly. "Good thing there won't be anyone else, isn't it?" Yeah, he was hers as much as she was his now. He hummed into her neck, one hand in her hair and the other grasping aimlessly for the blanket. "You're mine," she mumbled sleepily as the blanket was thrown over the two of them, "totally askew." "And you are mine," he whispered, kissing her hair just as she fell asleep. Tayuya blinked lazily at the sunlight that invaded the room. How the stupid sun always managed to hit her dead in the eye was beyond her, but at that moment, that didn't matter. She turned around and buried her face in Naruto's neck. Gods, he was so warm. And naked, for that matter. She grinned tiredly and shifted closer to him, close enough to press herself against him. His arms tightened around her and she decided to enjoy the feeling. It was amazing how slow his heartbeat was, she could hear it clearly in the back of her head. That weird mark on her neck was also pleasantly warm, so unlike the curse mark that felt more like it ate away at her skin with every second it was there. She lifted a leg and instantly regretted it, moaning in discomfort. "Oh shit," she groaned, "I think you broke my hips?" He snorted weakly. "Yeah? You think? I bet you one of my testicles is blue." She glared to his neck, at one of the many hickeys to be exact, and pinched his upper thigh. He, however, didn't react. "Your legs feel as bad as mine? You still feel your legs?" She laughed loudly and cuddled closer to him. This was like a dream she never even had, and yet, it was almost perfect. She wondered what would make it even better. Maybe if her privates weren't so sore, she could simply have him again. Yeah, as close to perfect as it got. Then another question came to her. "Hey," she began, our first child, what should it be?" He pressed his chin atop her head. "I dunno," he said, "but a girl would be nice. You know, as beautiful as you and just as fiery." She always loved it when he called her beautiful, not that she'd ever say so. But she suspected he knew that anyways. "Not a son?" she asked, "a blonde ball of sunshine? So you could poison his mouth?" he joked. She just bit him lightly and he laughed. "It would be nice, too. But I don't know why, but a daughter would be so. You want to spoil her," she threw in. He rubbed his chin into her head and she squirmed out of his hold. "Of course I want to," he said, looking down at her, "and I want to spoil you too, you know." She grinned and brought one hand to her left breast, making sure that Naruto looked down at it. "You just keep being you and gimme that dick of yours and I'm good, lover boy." His eyes were half-lidded and his voice so awfully husky that it reminded her of Nether Region's incapable state to comply with her naughty desires. "I'd give you so much more, Tayu. I love you." He kissed her before she could try to answer. They ignored the messenger that waited for them entirely. They appeared in Tsunade's office as soon as, well, they were late of course, but Tsunade had been expecting that. The Hokage patiently waited for them to sit in the chairs, but she wasn't sure if that second chair would ever find any use when these two showed up here. "I have a mission for you," she said. "What kind of mission?" Tayuya asked, comfortable as she was in Naruto's lap, the ring on her finger almost blatantly displayed with the way she put her hand on her own knee. It would really hurt to say that. "It's for Naruto alone," she said, and immediately both of their faces fell. "What do you mean?" Tayuya shouted. "Why would I go alone?" Naruto asked, just a tad short of also shouting. Tsunade sighed and signaled for an ANBU to bring their guest. "This is something the Raikage told me at the party, you know, the one you missed? Anyhow, if we want to win this war, we will need more firepower." She could see how the realization dawned on Naruto just as the door opened and Killer Bee entered the office. Tsunade liked to think that she ignored the way he introduced himself by rapping his own name. Tayuya was outright gaping at him. "What the actual fuck is wrong with this dude?" she asked loudly, and Killer Bee flinched. "Yo! Little lady, oh," he rapped, "there ain't nothing wrong, in me dong." He tapped his own head while he said that. "Dong?" Tayuya mouthed at Naruto, who merely shrugged. "So, the Uzumaki clan head said, the container of the 8 tails. Is that what you meant by more firepower?" Tsunade knew that he still hoped he didn't have to do this. "No, not exactly. He will help you gain control over the 9 tails." Naruto's expression soured immediately, but he said nothing. Maybe he had actually understood that he had to follow her orders. Tayuya on the other hand had no such reservations. "What the fuck are you talking about?" she seethed, "the damn furball won't fucking cooperate." He'd try and kill Loverboy first chance he gets. He doesn't deny that, Naruto added. He thinks it's funny that you actually believe I could ever control him, Tsunade sighed. I didn't think he would help us. But fact is, we need his power. Killer Bee can help you gain control, he already did. That I did, yo, the man in question rapped, all in one go, though. Tayuya grimaced in his direction. Shit, stop that. You fucking suck. Killer Bee's face soured and his lips began to tremble. He looked away from that girl mean, yo. While Tsunade wouldn't deny that Tayuya was right, they needed his cooperation. Your mission, Naruto, she told him, is to leave together with Killer Bee and gain control over the Nine Tails. Hopefully you will achieve this before the war starts. And why the hell can't I go with him? Tayuya questioned bitterly. Kami, the girl had grown attached to Naruto. Because you are an incredible powerful kunoichi, Tsunade said, you will be needed at the front lines. Yamato and a team of Chunin will accompany Naruto as an escort. Naruto put his hand on his wife's shoulder before she could snap back at her. He whispered something into her ear that gradually eased her stressed features. Fine, she begrudgingly agreed. But if his ass doesn't come back to me, I'll skin the fucking octopus alive. Killer Bee, for his part, actually appeared terrified. Wives are scary, yo. Naruto wanted to chuckle but he found that he couldn't. Tayuya's hand was fiercely grasping his coat, her head pressed against his armor plate. When she wasn't kissing him, that was. You better come back, she murmured against his lips. Of course, he assured her and pressed his lips onto the mark he had placed on her. And you'll come find me if I'm late? She snorted. Of course, dipshit. You still owe me a baby. He couldn't help but smile at her, pulled her closer into his arms. A little daughter, a feisty one and at least as beautiful as you. You keep fawning like that, she said, looking up to him, and I won't let you go before you make good on that promise. Kissing her before she could actually bring him to stay, he interrupted her. But Tayuya didn't seem to mind at all and demanded more and more with every passing second. He'd come back to her and she would come for him. Naruto lost track of time until someone cleared his throat behind him. Tayuya growled against his mouth, apparently not finished yet, but he reluctantly pulled back, kissing her forehead before letting go of her. Irika stood behind him, looking anywhere but at them, actually blushing. Naruto couldn't help but chuckle. He glanced at Kakashi, who stood a few steps behind Tayuya with Tsunade and the two Uzumaki girls. It was but a glance they shared, but Naruto was certain that his teacher had gotten the message. Look after her for me. Kakashi merely nodded once. Naruto would trust him with this and he knew that the man would do his utmost to take care of her. Karen and Sari, right next to Tsunade, looked both about ready to cry, Karen because she was just that emotional and Sari because Karen was surely crushing her hand in hers. He gave her a look of sympathy which she returned with a silent plea for help. He found himself laughing and turned to Tayuya one last time. See you when I put a leash on the furball? I will end you. You Kami-forsaken fleshbag, I will dash. And not a minute later, Tayuya agreed. Naruto was barely gone for an hour and Tayuya began feeling strange. Thing is, she hadn't really been far away from him ever since she got out of her coma. Being in Konoha made her uneasy, she did invade it after all. It may have been years ago but she did help and kill the third Hokage. And while her identity in the village was now just the Uzumaki's wife, she still felt like they'd find a reason to go after her. Which was why she was currently holed up in their bedroom at the compound. It was fairly big, bigger than anything she ever had lived in, and was fairly empty. Well, Naruto and her had barely spent any time here, after all, so any trinkets had yet to accumulate. The only thing that was definitely lived in was the bed. It smelled like him. She shook her head. She wasn't one to be all sentimental. Some training would do her good. But she did miss him. Downstairs, Sari was dragging a box full of scrolls and reams of paper through the hall, probably to where Karen was holed up in her research. She looked up when she spotted her and immediately abandoned her work. Sari pushed a scribbled note into her hand. Are you alright? It read. Tayuya shrugged. Sure, why the hell not? Just going to get some training done. She tried not to scowl at the obvious concern she saw in Sari's eyes and left without taking the second note the girl held out to her. The training ground was not as empty as she had suspected it to be. I should have been, given that it was the one on their own grounds. In the very center of the round stone platform stood Kakashi, giggling as he read his stupid orange book. The hell are you doing here? She asked him. He shrugged, turned a page and marked it before answering. I am here to train with you. Who said I need your help, Scarecrow? Tayuya huffed. He shrugged again. I have a Sharingan. I could teach you to fight it. I doubt you will sit back when Naruto comes back to fight Madara, so you better know how to handle it. That, Tayuya had to admit, was true. Fine, she said, but you better prepare for a whole lot of pain. I'm in a bad mood. Kakashi didn't know what he had gotten himself into, so he gave her an ice smile. The last he'd manage that day. When Karen finally left the lab, which was soon to be moved into the research building, she was treated to a site she would have described as a war zone. She knew that this had, at one point, been the training ground, but she could neither see the platform of hardened stone nor any of the training dummies that should have been standing about 200 meters in front of her. In fact, she couldn't even see the ground. No, for there is a huge hole on the ground that was so deep that, from where she was standing, she couldn't see the end of it, just the opposite wall, which looked like it had been a clean cut down with something really sharp. What the actual fuck? She voiced hollowly, just as lightning broke out of the clear blue sky and shot right into the pit. Holy shit, that was an infused stone platform. That was fucking expensive. She looked around wildly. Tayuya. Where the hell are you? I'm down here, it came from the pit, don't shout so much. The echo is terrible down here. A cloud of smoke wafted out of the pit like smoke from a chimney. Damn it, Cyclopes, she could hear her shout, I was talking to Karen. There was another loud explosion and something shot out of the pit. Karen instinctively brought up her hands to defend herself against whatever was sent flying at her, but as two arms wrapped around her, laughing madly, she was sure that it could only be Tayuya. So she whacked the girl's head. Hard. Ouch, she exclaimed, letting go. What the hell was that for? You blew up our training ground. Karen hissed. What were you doing? Training, duh, Tayuya huffed. And besides, it wasn't me. The scarecrow made the hole. I just blew a chunk out of the mountain. Mountain. Karen mouthed in bewilderment. Sorry, choose this moment to come out of the house. She merely glanced at the hole before tapping Karen's shoulder. As her cousin faced her, she turned Karen's around to where the Hokage mountain towered over Konoha. Tayuya, she asked, can I assume that there has always been a hole to the left of the first Hokage? We won't have to pay for this. You can, Tayuya laughed, but that would be delusional. Karen leaned heavily onto Sari, who soothingly patted her back. Hopefully Naruto comes back before you blow up something important. She glared heavily in the direction of Kumo. And if not, I will skin him alive. It would regrown anyways. You cold, little bro? Killer Bee asked him as they sat on deck of the ship that would bring them to whatever island they needed to go to. Nah, Naruto assured, I just fear that the clan's head of the research department wants my hide. You did something, yo? No, but I have a very bad feeling. After all, Karen could be as scary as Tayuya if she wanted to. How long until we arrive? Killer Bee looked up from his notebook and towards the back of the ship, which held a noticeably lower altitude than the front. With ya clones, boosting us like that? A few hours, that's fat, duh. Naruto nodded, facing straight ahead. He already missed Tayuya. Badly. You wouldn't just relent your powers to me, right? He asked the fox. You wish, foolish human. That's what I feared. Irika, who was clinging to the railing at the very front of the ship, looked up. His face was pale and his expression one of exhaustion. Please, he chocked. Go slower. Naruto shook his head. No can do. I've got a wife to come back to. Irika turned a bit green. Keep this up and I'll die before I find one. Laughing, Naruto stood and walked over to his former teacher. He slapped his back, hard. Oh you. Irika merely emptied his stomach in response. Yamato, sitting up high on the mast, shook his head. This was already turning into a disaster. Kakashi was about to leave when he reflexively caught something that was thrown at him. It was a scroll, the symbol for sage was written on it. That was, so the Jonin knew, Naruto's handwriting. He turned to Tayuya, whose eyes were golden and blood-red color streamed from her eyes down to her jawline. It disappeared under her blue collar. He looked at her for a second before opening the scroll. He wanted you to have it, Tayuya said. With your stupid eye you can see how the chakra flows through me. Memorize it and practice. We gonna train tomorrow? She vanished in a swirl of leaves. Kakashi sighed. He had been the one hoping to teach her something and here he was, learning something new. He unfurled the scroll and noted the storage seal at the very top. Toad oil, it read. The first step towards sage mode is getting a feel for nature chakra itself, or natural energy as the toads call it. It is all around us and present in every plant and object, living or even dead. It can be felt through meticulous meditation, easier with an object of choice in hands, or through the appliance of the special toad oil to the skin, where it will naturally attract the chakra. There is a vast difference between normal chakra, manipulated chakra with an elemental affinity and nature chakra. A turtle. Naruto couldn't believe something that big was kept a secret. The security here was overbearing at its best and the amount of barriers they had to pass was disconcerting. It is, Turtle Island, that is. Ugh, he would never get used to the rapping. Even he could rhyme better than that. They passed a whole lot of weird people and even weirder vegetation, but Naruto urged them to go on. Yamato tried to slow him down and grabbed his shoulder. Naruto harshly threw his arm off. "I won't slow down," he hissed. "We have been traveling for 2 days now. Madara could start his fucking war any day now. I will not leave Tayuya to fight alone." He snarled at Yamato. "Try to stop me and I'll leave you behind." He didn't try to stop him again, and even Killer Bee was silent then. Naruto paid them no mind. He was constantly arguing with the fox, so much that his head began to hurt. He moved faster then, so fast that he had almost passed their destination of not for Killer Bee stopping him. "A waterfall?" he questioned. "The Falls of Truth," Killer Bee answered seriously, for once not rapping at all. "Behind it, we find the temple in which you will train to control the 9 tails. Then let's go." Naruto was already stalking across the water when Killer Bee held him back. He shook his head. "You can't go in yet," he impressed upon Naruto. "You need to conquer yourself before you can even attempt to conquer the beast." "Conquer myself?" Naruto asked, shrugging off the older man's hand. "What the hell?" Killer Bee nodded. "The temple will not admit you if you haven't done so. You will sit under the waterfall and meditate. You will enter your mind and face the darkest part of yourself. Best it and we will enter." "Not 1 minute earlier." Naruto grimaced but sat down on the patch of grass that seemed to float in the center of the water and focused. He had a bad feeling about this. Sasuke sat on the hard stone inside the mountain graveyard, his eyes empty and blankly staring ahead. His head ached terribly, his brother's words echoed painfully loud in the dead silence of his mind, only occasionally interrupted by Sakura's voice and even Naruto's. The mark on his neck was as good as gone and he was beginning to feel faint, as if he hadn't eaten in days, hadn't rested in what felt like an eternity. Madara wasn't there, hadn't informed him of his absence. He was alone again, and the silence was deafening, making this awful thoughts all the louder. What had he been doing all this time? Sasuke remembered that he didn't like to be alone. He had been after his clan got slaughtered, of course, and stayed away as far as possible from everyone, but that didn't mean he wanted to be alone. Then there had been Naruto, who had not left him alone, despite his attitude, and insisted on being his rival and later even his friend and brother. And he who hated being alone, had pushed him away. For a cursed power that had by now become absolutely superfluous. It was so goddamn pathetic. He was pathetic. With a sigh, he leaned back against the cool stone. Who was he kidding? He had messed up everything. Itachi had killed the whole clan, even their own parents, only so he could live. And what did he do? He spat on it, on his sacrifice, on his legacy, on his dreams. He remembered Itachi to be so very peaceful, not one for confrontation unless it was unavoidable. Itachi had wished for peace, and here he was now, his little brother, at the side of the man that had declared war on the world. Sasuke rose to stand in front of the wall that held too many Sharingan, the eyes of his clan. He felt as if they all stared at him, looked down on him, on the fool of an Uchiha. He grit his teeth. He was not going to tolerate this anymore, he was not going to tolerate himself anymore. He was Sasuke Uchiha, brother of Itachi Uchiha, and he would be damned if he'd not stop Madara. To protect the village he had once forsaken, the village Itachi had laid down his life for, and the village that was home to those that still called him a friend. And if it was the last thing he'd do. The inside of the cave was dark, but the light let inside by the huge door behind the waterfall was enough to illuminate a bridge, lined by over a dozen statues that all missed their head. "What the hell are these?" Naruto asked, still a bit shaken over having battled and conversed with this dark part of himself. He had a lot of repressed issues, really. He had to smile then, because, strangely enough, Tayuya had been their point of agreement. Their aspirations, their dream, their future with her. The smile turned into a frown. Kami, he missed her so? They are past Jinchuriki, yo, didn't make it though, be wrapped. Naruto wondered how he very picked up such an awful habit. That was worse than his, you know. Yamato hummed in thought as he inspected them closely. Why are they missing their head? You'll see, was all the response they got out of Killer Bee. Not trying to lose his head, Naruto walked past the statues and into the temple. Inside was a great hall with a single door at the very back, the head of a beast was right next to it. Killer Bee walked right towards it. Here we gonna test you, yo, he rapped, if you not sincere, a tiny shred o' darkness in your heart, and you're a goner. Yamato gasped. Is that why the statues have no head? As Bee nodded gravely, Naruto sighed. Can't I just kick the door in? You will not destroy something my father built. Kurama hollered in his head. Yeah. God damn it, don't shout so much. He sighed. Help me get inside? Why would I do that? I dunno. To kick my ass? Fine. Naruto snorted and approached the head, putting his hand on the snout. And now? He asked the fox. Stick your gob inside. What? He said out loud, "Why the hell would I do that? Just do it." He sighed. Fine. Naruto pushed his head past the stone fangs and was surprised by the fact that it was so spacious. It was a square space, carved into the stone and, oh, there was a switch at the very back. Really, he huffed. There was once a kill switch to it. The priest that would have worked here could have beheaded imposters, Kurama grumbled. Damn, that's harsh, Naruto mumbled and flicked the switch. As he pulled his head back out, the door beside the stone head began to slide open, revealing colors? An acid trip captured in a room? That looks funky, Yamato supplied lamely. Killer Bee merely strode into the room where Naruto couldn't make out the ground or even the walls. It looked like the older man was afloat in the room. In here you'll communicate with your beast and tame it, yo. He patted the stone statue of a wild beast that appeared to be afloat inside the weird room. And if you don't make it, well, we'll seal the old fox in here until there's a new Jinchuriki. The fox growled in his head, a laugh mixed with a scoff, but Naruto entered nonetheless. The ground felt solid under his feet but didn't really look the part. Temperature was strange, it didn't feel warm but neither was it cold. In fact, he didn't feel the air on his skin at all. But no matter the discomfort, he wouldn't fail. Because he knew that if he didn't make this, Tayuya would have to be the next to carry the fox. He couldn't let that happen. Said Beast merely scoffed loudly. As Yamato was about to enter, Killer Bee stopped him. Only us Jinchuriki can enter here, you gotta stay out of here. The man protested but Naruto waved him off. It's fine, he said, this won't take long. Oh don't you best too sure, that ain't your cure. Killer Bee chimed, it takes a long time and even then it might not be well to dine. Please, stop rapping, Naruto sighed, it's giving me migraine. And so the door closed, shutting Naruto off from the outside world. Just like it had been planned. You actually did it, Tayuya muttered, watching as the markings around Kakashi's eyes and face vanished. The man shrugged. I suppose so. After seeing how the nature chakra flowed though it was easier. Uhu, Tayuya hummed non-comically before cracking her knuckles. Now let's see what you can do with that in a fight. Kakashi whimpered pathetically before he ran and dodged out of the way of Tayuya's chains, that were directed by the haunting melody from the girl's flute, just as her doki joined the hunt, hacking the training ground to pieces. He was so going to die. Tayuya was sitting in Naruto's office, the one he had used all but twice to date, and read through their financial record, which was merely 1 page long. She wondered what exactly they would add here. They now owned the land this compound was standing on and had no taxes to pay. Electricity and water was provided by the village and even the waste disposal that roamed the city was free of charge for them. She laid down the folder and sighed. She was bored out of her mind and sore from training all day, which was essentially her beating Hatake within an inch of his life or until his sage mode ran out, whichever occurred first. It had been 1.5 weeks now since Naruto left and she fucking missed him. She found that sleep was hard to come by without him and so she took to reading instead or took random walks through the village. Given that she had nothing else to do now, she decided to do just that. It had started to snow recently, given that December was no fast approaching. Tayuya hadn't thought that a country as warm as the Land of Fire even got that much snow but Konoha was snugly covered in 2 feet of snow. Thank Kami Naruto had been bored enough to tell her about snow walking once. With her feet a safe distance from the cold ground, Tayuya left the compound to see where Karen had gone earlier that day. There were just 2 places she would probably go. One being the research building, which proved to be empty, and the cafe that sold the best cinnamon rolls in the village. She spotted Karen along with the rest of the kunoichi she knew in one of the corner booths that were visible through the big window front. Ten spotted her through the window and waved her inside. Well shit, no escaping now. Damn, when did she develop a decency? Or manners in general? She blamed Naruto for that. Hey there, she greeted lamely and slid in beside Karen before ordering a bunch of cinnamon rolls. Find anything interesting in the office? Karen asked her. Well, not interesting but the chair smelt of Naruto so. No, not really, she responded, though I wonder why the fuck we don't pay a single cent for just about anything here. Are we that important? The bigger clans of the village only pay taxes for their business or trade, Ino answered her, nursing a cup of tea, though it is a bit different with us. The Yamanaka don't have a business to speak of but we make up most of the TNI, which apparently compensates for that. The Hyuga have to pay taxes, Hinata said quietly. There is no special institution we make up or supplies we deliver so we pay, though it is very little. Tayuya hummed before looking at Karen. When are we selling the seals, by the way? Karen shrugged. No idea. There's only 3 of us now and we can't exactly mass produce with so little space, even with the shadow clones. But it is enough, right? Tayuya blinked a few times and looked at the girl that had spoken. She had never met her before. Who the hell are you? She asked, frowning in thought. The girl giggled and a cat emerged from the back of her blouse. Tayuya blinked again. What the fuck? I'm Tamaki, she said, nice to meet you. Yeah, I'm sure it is, Tayuya mumbled just as her cinnamon buns were placed on the table. She sighed and had to admit to herself that she was not hungry at all. She caught the gleam in Hinata's eyes and smirked. You want some? She asked her. Hinata nodded vigorously. It caused Tayuya to laugh and, because she was not hungry anyways, she slid the plate across the table to the Hyuga. As the others began to talk among themselves again, Karen nudged her side. Are you okay? She asked quietly. Tayuya shrugged. Course I am. Why the fuck not? You look awful, Karen said, indicating the bags under her eyes. She shrugged again. You aren't exactly perfect yourself, thank you very much. Karen sighed. I know you miss him. Don't worry, he'll be back before you know it. Tayuya really hoped he would. Gods, how could she miss him so much? I'll take your word for it, she mumbled and left without another word, leaving the others to look worriedly after her. She barely slept that night, and in the little time she did, she dreamed of Naruto and how he never returned to her. Naruto distinctively remembered his mindscape to be a dank sewer. And while it was still dank, it was less of a sewer than it appeared to be a ruin of some kind. It was also kind of bright compared to the darkness there was before. Still, Naruto couldn't exactly see where to go. Hey! Kurama, he shouted, where the hell are you? There was no answer, so Naruto continued to wander. There was rubble everywhere, lining the water path he was walking on, but he couldn't tell what the rubble had once been. A house, maybe, or just a wall. The stone was whitish, a light gray at times, and Naruto would have called it limestone for a lack of a better word. These pieces of debris reminded him of something, but he couldn't put a finger on it. Also, where was the light coming from? Looking up, Naruto spotted red sun hanging in the sky? Overhead? What would be everything above him be called in his own mind? It was an interesting shade of red, one that didn't appear ominous and was yet nothing like the red of a setting sun. It reminded him of something. Well, wasn't Tayuya's hair the very same shade? You have changed. Naruto yelped in surprise and jumped away from the voice, directly into a wall. The fox laughed loudly from his perch atop a giant piece of debris that served as some sort of stage to him. The fox laughed. Amusing, really. Shut up. Naruto grumbled. He looked up at his tenant, who in turn glared down at him. So, this is what the seal looks like now? Indeed. No more bars. I have to admit, that is the first time I am somewhat unrestrained within a prison. Naruto nodded. Now, how will we do this? Do what, human? The fox rumbled in obviously feigned ignorance. Are you kidding? Naruto asked irately. I traveled all the damn way here to, I dunno, control your powers or some shit. The fox settled down, his giant head on his front paws. Did you now? And how would you, puny human, ever defeat me? Naruto held out a hand and a chain materialized in it. With this, I suppose. Point taken. The fox stared at him, almost blankly. You have changed. You already said that, Naruto huffed. Kurama shook his head. I did, yes. But this change is quite astounding. It even reflects in this place. He looked up at the sun that loomed over them, shining down a soft, warm light. It definitely changed you. Naruto shrugged. I guess. What's your point? Do you remember how we first met? How you demanded my power to summon some frog? I do. Jiraiya threw me off a goddamn cliff. Naruto smiled at the memory. That old pervert? You have come here specifically with the intention to lay claim to my powers, and yet you have not attacked me. That was true, Naruto had to admit. He looked up at Kurama and a question popped up in his mind. And why did you not attack me? Aren't you supposed to hate me? The fox growled. And I do hate you, but I could not possibly fight back against these accursed chains of yours. You mean? I could simply bind you and that's it? Indeed. Huh, Naruto made. Well then. And maybe he should just do that. Maybe he should just do that. But, he didn't. Naruto frowned. The thought bothered him, the very idea of chaining someone down did not sit well with him at all. He didn't like forcing people, didn't like being forced himself. The Kyuubi was, as far as Naruto knew, immortal, and had been sealed, bound and enslaved for gods knew how long. He could understand Kurama's desire for freedom, he felt it himself after all. What will you do, Naruto? Naruto sighed. I don't know, he said dejectedly. I am supposed to be here and gain the power to defeat Madara and his army, whatever it may be, and yet. He shook his head. Is it so wrong that I don't want to chain you down any more than you already are? The fox was silent for a long time and Naruto wondered if the beast had fallen asleep on his perch. No, he eventually rumbled. But thus I fail to understand you. My power is near limitless. Should you just claim my chakra, you could easily defeat Madara. You have become strong already, adding my strength would serve to make you invincible. Why are you saying that? Naruto asked, do you want me to enslave you? The fox laughed dryly, hollowly. Again no, but it is what I have come to expect. With the exemption of your mother, all my previous Jinchuriki have made use of me, with my consent or not. Naruto nodded slowly. So, what do I have to do to earn you consent? You want to earn it? Kurama asked in disbelief. Yes, he answered simply. Because that is the right thing to do. As it was the right thing to help you mate, even though you loathed the sight of her? The fox asked bemusedly. You are rather idealistic. He laughed, remembering his teachers and their ideals. I guess, but I don't think you can complain now. No, the fox admitted before falling silent again. He appeared deep in thought, so Naruto decided not to say anything. Then fight me, puny human. Kurama rumbled, rising to his full, towering height. Fight me and show me your resolve. Defeat me with your own strength and we will talk. Naruto met Kurama's crimson gaze with the solid gold of his eyes, ready to fight. Say be it. I will show you my resolve. Lady Tsunade. The Hokage almost jumped out of her seat when Shizune suddenly burst through the door. The ruffled and feathered something in her hand was trying in vain to escape her death group. Shizune. What the hell is that? She decided to ask first, hastily hiding a bottle of sake in the top drawer of her desk. Her assistant almost threw what appeared to be a messenger hawk from Suna in her face. They found him, she exclaimed nervously. They found Madara near our borders in the land of wind. Tsunade exploded out of her seat. Mobilize immediately. Have the other Kage been informed? Yes. Shizune affirmed, following after Tsunade, who hurried out of the office. Lord Gaara sent a message to all the others and even to Lord Mifune. Good, Tsunade breathed, allowing herself to calm down. Now was not the time for rash decisions. Get me Shikaku Nara here and all the other Jonin. And if Kakashi's late, I will personally serve his testicles from his body. As Shizune and a few ANBU fled the building, Tayuya was annoying the living daylight out of Karen by sulking in her lab. It was a new building, rather modern and bright, white walls with too many metal drawers lining them, white tile floor and far too little space for the actual desks and lab equipment that Karen had squeezed in here. Maybe she should just commission a second building? Clones could work there, after all. She was just about to effectively create a storage scroll for raw medical chakra when Tayuya sighed loudly again. Karen threw her pen at her in response. God damn it, she sighed loudly, will you tell me already? Tayuya harumphed. It's dash. Another pen hit her head. If you say it's nothing one more time, I'll throw you out for good. Shutting up, Tayuya sank into Asari's chair, who was out to buy more ink. I don't know. Karen sighed. Well, that's something. Let me guess, it's about Naruto. Tayuya didn't answer, but she didn't need to anyways. He's going to be fine, Karen assured her, though she had done so at least 80 times on that day alone. I know. Tayuya snapped angrily, but I just dash. God fucking damn it all, she snarled violently. She stood and began pacing again. It's just, the more I think about me and lover boy, the more I realize that I didn't do shit for him. The helplessness in her eyes shocked Karen to the core. He saved my life like 5 times or some shit. And what the fuck did I do? I spat in his face when he was trying to help me. She was almost crying now, clutching the blue hoodie she wore, Naruto's hoodie, like a lifeline. What if he doesn't come back? What if he fucking dies and I didn't even tell him that I love him? Tayuya chalked back a sob and sank to the ground on her knees. Whoa. Karen was more than just a bit speechless. Aside from admitting that she had missed Naruto, Tayuya had not ever really mentioned her feelings to her. In fact, Karen didn't think she ever spoke about her feelings. Well, to Naruto, sure, but not with anyone else. With a sigh, Karen made her way over to her sister and patted her head. She earned a glare for that, but Tayuya didn't shrug her off. Another bad sign. Karen plopped down at her side. Damn, the floor was cold. There was a new idea for seals. Anyhow. Great, she wasn't really sure what to say. She shook her head. It was too late anyways. He does love you, you know? Tayuya looked up at her, then back down at the ground. She just shrugged. Do you know why? Karen asked. She didn't respond for a while. Eventually she looked up at Karen again. I don't know. It was definitely not okay for Tayuya to sound that helpless. That was terrifying. He married you, you crazy woman. There has to be something. She just shrugged. I didn't do anything, she mumbled, none of this romance shit. I didn't do a single fucking thing and yet? Karen bumped her shoulder into Tayuya. Well, he does love you and not the things you presumably didn't do. Because Karen was sure that Tayuya could be really sweet if she really wanted to. I told you, he's an idiot, Tayuya snorted, though Karen could hear the smile in her voice. And he's your idiot, remember that, Karen told her, grasping Tayuya's hand with the black ring on it. Well fuck me, you're right. Your sarcasm is noted, Karen responded dryly. She squeezed her sister's hand. Did it ever occur to you that he loves you because you let him? That he loves you because you trust him? Tayuya groaned and buried her face in her knees. Gods, shit. Stop being so cheesy. Karen huffed. It's the truth, isn't it? She got a huff in response. Yeah, he would be that cheesy, she admitted. Well, there you have it, Karen said, proud of herself and her apparent counseling skills. Just as Tayuya snorted, and Yugao in her ANBU gear flickered into the lab, disturbing a few papers on a table, prompting Karen to squawk indignantly. Lady Tayuya, she spoke urgently, Lady Tsunade has summoned you and all the other jonin. Please head to the tower immediately. What the hell's going on? Tayuya asked, standing up. Madara has shown himself. Yugao answered seriously, worry evident in her voice. Tayuya groaned as she pulled Karen to her feet. Oh fuck off. There had been no word from Naruto yet. Karen wondered if he was already done? Judging by Tayuya's scowl, she was mentally daring him not to be finished. Let's go, Tayuya grumbled. She quickly and awkwardly hugged Karen before vanishing in a body flicker before there ever was a chance to say goodbye. Karen imagined that she didn't want to hear it. She couldn't blame her for it. You were really down, back then, Karen told her, fiddling with her long red hair. Sakura had left, sari in tow, to do something about her constant coughing that she seemed to have these days. Ino was taking care of the children, Mikoto had apparently fallen asleep and they were trying to get the duckbutt head to pick his daughter up. Tayuya nodded. Never thanked you, did I? No, you didn't, Karen agreed with a small chuckle. Well, ain't ever gonna happen. Tayuya huffed mockingly before deflating a bit. Just, know that I am fucking grateful. Karen smiled and didn't say anything else. It changed her much, living in Konoha. No, that wasn't right. Living with Naruto changed her. All the while he never seemed to change, always the same. She gently felt her stomach and smiled. She'd be the same for the child, if not as stupid as the father. It was cold, being alone, and, so Tayuya decided, her daughter, or even son, would never be alone. Not truly. Not ever. But as she stared out of the window into the cold, harsh night, a feeling of foreboding made itself known in her heart. She desperately wished for Naruto to be here. Before the feeling could take hold of her completely. They were just short of the land of winds when they encountered their first enemies. Divided in groups of 5, Tayuya was stuck on the same group as Kakashi and Guy, which grated her nerves to no end. With them was an ANBU, Yugao, and Sai, who had confessed to be there solely because he had been charged with keeping her alive, a remnant order from Danzo or some shit, but she couldn't care less about that anyways. Tayuya had barely gotten a foot down on the next tree branch when her instinct screamed at her to move away. She threw herself against the tree trunk. The branch she had been standing on was immediately served just where she had been on it. She glared ahead where a cloaked man with mask stood in a tree, a giant fan in one hand and a chain dangling down the other to connect with the handle of his weapon. Through the 2 eye holes in the mask on Sharingan and one Rinnegan I peered coldly at her. Where the fuck did you get that eye? Tayuya snarled. She could feel the same chakra off that fucker. That was Madara. Does it unsettle you? He asked, not even reacting as the rest of the Konoha ninja surrounded him in the trees. You will learn to fear it? Tayuya scowled at him. She didn't understand. Why only one Rinnegan? Wouldn't it be far more effective to have both? It outclassed the Sharingan, right? A sharp whistle from her flute launched a chain at the masked man, but it passed through him. Well, that would explain why he had kept the Sharingan. She glanced at Kakashi and nodded impeccably at him. As one, they launched themselves at Madara. But, just like the chain, they merely phased through him. Tayuya immediately attacked again with a snarl on her lips, but Kakashi stood still, both eyes wide. The Uzumaki paid him no mind. Sharp and brutal, she let her chains rain down on Madara, keeping them lodged in the ground. The masked man was completely surrounded and punctured by over a few dozen chains, all of them keeping Tayuya suspended above him in the air. She observed him closely, but there didn't seem to be any damage. Kakashi suddenly turned and shouted, "Kamui," at the top of his lungs. At first nothing seemed to happen, but Madara suddenly grunted and jumped out of the chains that surrounded him onto another tree. His left arm was bleeding heavily. What the fuck? Tayuya huffed. How'd you hit him? She landed beside Kakashi, who stared wide-eyed at their opponent. As the rest of their group engaged him, Tayuya took the time to take in nature chakra. Her sensory range expanded and the many presences that reminded her of the white Zetsu thing were just about everywhere. Kakashi growled. Either Madara has the other Sharingan that once belonged to an old friend or, that is Obito. Aha, Tayuya let out, observing the fight as the others engaged. Then, I can tell you that the Sharingan eye is not implanted in his skull. I can sense that yours is implanted, the chakra in it is a bit off, but his eye is perfectly natural in his head. But that can't be, Kakashi breathed. Obito, was buried alive. He doesn't feel dead to me, though a lot of his body gives me a really creepy vibe, Tayuya told him before bringing her flute to her lips. Fucking creep. She charged, but Kakashi didn't move, instead staring numbly at the man that could be his oldest friend. Obito, he muttered to himself. How was this possible? He could feel that the other Sharingan was connected to his own, to the same dimension he could access. That was how he wounded him. He simply pushed the part that the masked man was hiding in the Kamui dimension outside, straight into Tayuya's chains. That basically confirmed it. And the fact that Tayuya perceived the eye as natural in the body only served as further evidence to the same thing. That man, Madara, was Obito Uchiha, his former comrade, a man that should be, for all intents and purposes, dead. Where had he been all these years? For over a decade, 2 decades even, Kakashi had grieved his loss, had grieved Rin's loss. I have no time for this, the masked man announced suddenly, we will meet on the battlefield. Until then, have fun with these. At his command and just as he vanished, all the presences Tayuya could feel burst out into the open. 5 dozen Zetsu began attacking them and Kakashi was forced to contemplate this another time. The white Zetsu were everywhere. They seemed to spawn indefinitely in the forest of the Land of Fire that ran along the border to the Land of Wind. The masked man, Obito, had used the artificially created forest of the first Hokage to spawn an abundance of his Zetsu soldiers, using the residual chakra that had been sleeping in the mighty trees. It was efficient this way and kept chakra costs low for the man. Far from his current position in one of Orochimaru's secret bases, Kabuto was waiting for Obito's signal. Once enough Zetsu had been spawned, Orochimaru's former apprentice would invoke the Edo Tensei and raise an unstoppable army from the dead. That should be enough to draw out both the 8 tails and the 9 tails. Naruto was notorious for placing his comrades before himself and would readily come to their aid. As for Killer Bee, there was no way that the man with the mightiest brother complex since Itachi Uchiha would not come to his older brother's aid. In the rocky deserts of the Land of Wind was where he would break them. He would use the Edo Tensei to revive Madara himself and then, with the Rinnegan's power, would restore him completely. Their morale would shatter like glass, no one was strong enough to take on the monster that was Madara Uchiha. Summoning the statue would have to wait until the 2 missing Jinchuriki arrived but Obito was sure that the wait wouldn't be overly long. This war was as good as over. Everything was going as planned. His identity to be revealed, however, had not been part of the plan. He would have discreetly switched places with Madara so that it appeared that he had been the one reanimated. Not that it mattered. It only meant that Kakashi's will to fight had either been broken or at least lessened considerably. Once the 10 tails had been awakened, once the Rinne Sharingan was his, there would be no more war. No more pain. It would be the world that Rin would have been able to live in, the world that he made for her. It would be peace. Forevermore. Naruto couldn't explain what was going on. On first glance it may have been obvious that he was battling the Kyuubi, but it didn't feel like he was. Blow for blow he matched the fox, every blow that landed hurt just like it would outside of the seal and yet, it didn't feel right. With every ball of condensed chakra that Naruto deflected OT blocked with a mass of clones or raw chakra carried with it so much pain, so much hate and sorrow. These feelings weren't his own, he concluded. It was the pain that Kurama carried with him for all of his immortal existence. The feelings kept mounting, so much loss and suffering, destruction and blind hate kept hitting him with crushing force, Naruto could barely focus on his own fight. Kurama was an immortal construct of chakra. He had been around ever since the sage created him from the 10 tails. That was so many centuries ago, Naruto could scarcely imagine just how much the fox had seen. There was so much hate for him, for humans in general. There was hate, but did that mean that the beast was capable of love? It would explain why he had helped him with Tayuya. Maybe he understood what it meant to love, maybe he had loved once and had lost it all. Naruto took the next blow head-on but didn't feel anything from it. He blinked a few times but all he saw was white. What the hell, he exclaimed, what dash? You surprise me again, Naruto, the fox's voice thundered, though much tamer and almost human. I did not think you'd take the time to focus on anything besides defeating me. What was that? Naruto asked into the great nothing. 2 crimson eyes opened in the distance, seemingly afloat in the empty space. We were battling in your mind, O container of mine. I have had access to your sense and memories for a long time but that doesn't mean that it works only one way. These were your feelings, right? It was all of me, Kurama confirmed. I have not expected you to realize that. Naruto nodded, though wasn't sure if he should be insulted by that. So, we stop fighting? The fox laughed. No, I will still crush you. It merely means that you and I just might end up understanding each other. Is that such a bad thing? Naruto asked. Why can't we be friends? Friends? Kurama laughed. Mankind and me have never been friends. I have been hunted and imprisoned all my life, for as long as I care to remember. What makes you think you could just undo it? I am not mankind, was the answer. What makes you think I can't? The crimson eyes blinked once before narrowing. You would not be the first to try and fool me, boy. I am power, a power that you seek. Do not act as if you would free me from the good of your heart. Naruto placed a hand over his heart. Maybe. I do need your power. Desperation is something terrible. But I don't think I'd betray you. You aren't smart enough to even think of the word betrayal, Kurama scoffed, his voice a harsh whisper. Well, you aren't exactly smart either, getting sealed all over, aren't you? Naruto shot back heatedly. You dare insult me? The Kyuubi roared back furiously, his eyes glowing ominously. I dare tell you what I think, you but hurt, overgrown plushie. Naruto snarled. And I think that all this fighting isn't fucking necessary. A low growl echoed off walls Naruto couldn't see. You don't know what you're talking about. I fight you for my power, I fight for my freedom. I murdered your parents in the blink of an eye for my freedom, boy. What makes you think fighting isn't necessary? You can't talk your way out of everything. Not everyone will listen. Then why don't you fucking start with the listening? Naruto roared at him, Tayuya's vulgar influence striking true. You whine all day about being sealed and imprisoned and shit, but did it ever even occur to you to fucking talk to me? That maybe I'd listen. He took a deep breath, an action that felt really strange in his own mind. You've been stuck inside of me for almost 18 God's damned years, and do you know what 90% of the things you told me were? He didn't wait for an answer. You told me you'd gut me or some shit for keeping you sealed. Well shit, sure I'd let you do that, he spat sarcastically. You are an immortal mass of chakra, so I'd get that you have no brain and all that. Kurama growled menacingly at him. Insults, is that it? Weren't we going to fight? No. Naruto hollered. That is exactly what I am talking about. You are all about your stupid freedom, but all you do for it is scream and claw. If you want to fight, fine. I'll put your furry ass in the ground. Naruto grit his teeth and forced his temper down. You don't get it. You've been inside of me for as long as I draw breath. How does it not occur to you, the one who should know me better than myself, that you could simply fucking ask to get out? There was no response from Kurama, just his crimson eyes staring unblinkingly at him. Naruto glared right back. How could that overgrown fuzzball be so stubborn? He had forgiven just about everyone he had once fought. Nagato and Tayuya were just the most recent ones. The amount of sorrow and pain that were bottled up in the fix were surely a reason, but he had proven to be intelligent enough to try and manipulate him when he had been younger. Why could the stupid fox not accept that he'd work with him? Naruto didn't want to claim this power, even though he so desperately needed it. He didn't want to enslave Kurama. The fox was alive, breathing or not, and life was something Naruto treasured. Be it his own or the ones of his loved ones, of his precious people. The fox snorted loudly, startling him. Precious people, huh? He scoffed. You gain them easily, don't you? Easier than you, that's for sure, Naruto huffed. Don't act like that is something to be proud of. Naruto rolled his eyes. So, what is it then, he asked. Will you keep up this nonsense and fight? Or will you work with me? The eyes in the distance blinked shut, effectively disappearing, before the fox fully materialized before him. You would work with me? He asked. Naruto sighed. Are you seriously going to doubt that? Isn't there enough evidence going around in my head that I'd be willing to forgive and forget as long as you help me protect my precious people? Kurama remained silent, eyes intently focused on Naruto. He supposed that the fox was indeed going through aforementioned memories. Idly Naruto wondered how much time had passed outside by now. He really wanted to get back out there. Fine, the fox rumbled, I will work with you. Naruto sighed in relief. Thank Kami Dash, but why are there always conditions? Naruto whined, falling to his knees. What was it this time? Sacrificing 100 souls? A real snake-like vibe he got there. But you won't have my power, Kurama finished. Naruto gaped at him. What? He asked dumbly. What should I work with then? I need to get rid of Madara. I will not have my power wielded like some common weapon, Kurama growled. If you want my chakra to burn away the 10 tails, unleash me onto the battlefield. Then what? Naruto shouted up to him, what do I have from working with you, then? I will teach you, Kurama spoke, I will teach you what my father used to teach. The old ways, the powerful ways. I will teach you Ninshu. Naruto stared at him for a second before tilting his head to the side in confusion. What the hell was Ninshu? Sasuke entered the hideout without meeting any resistance. It should have concerned him that Orochimaru's main base was completely unguarded, but it worked in his favor. The long, seemingly endless corridors passed by in a blur as he hurriedly raced to find the snake Sannin. As much as a monster the man may have been, Sasuke could still use him. To end this war, more than just Naruto was needed. Sasuke had passed by a skirmish and almost couldn't believe his eyes when he saw Haku and Zabuza fight the allied shinobi forces. He had almost stopped, but only almost, for Kakashi had been there. Sasuke didn't feel like he could face the man. Not until he had done his first steps towards redemption. The door to Orochimaru's chambers weren't even locked and Sasuke entered without preamble. The stench of rotting flesh bit like acid in his nose, but he kept his features expressionless. Apparently, Kabuto had abandoned Orochimaru entirely and left him to rot. Literally. If not for the gleaming yellow eyes that stared at him from underneath the heap of human flesh, Sasuke would have thought the snake dead. Orochimaru, he said by way of greeting and strode further into the room. What a sight for sore eyes. His words were dripping sarcasm but his voice was not. It was hollow, just like he felt. The lump of flesh that was Orochimaru didn't even stir. His yellow eyes followed Sasuke's every move. It seems we have reached an impasse, Sasuke said, casually filling those scrolls that laid strewn out all over a desk beside Orochimaru's bed. I need your help and you could use a lot more than that. He flung a scroll he had been holding back onto the table. I've been to a few of your hideouts, he said, meeting Orochimaru's unwavering gaze. I've found your backup plan. Sasuke retrieved a purple scroll from a seal on his wrist. Orochimaru's eyes widened just a fraction but Sasuke could see it perfectly well. I am willing to bring you back, if you do something for me. Do we have an understanding? The Uchiha didn't care for what the man thought about this. If push came to shove, he would force him with Tsukuyomi. Sasuke opened the scroll and took the seal tag from within. Good. He held his breath and placed the seal on his curse mark. In the same moment, the light faded from Orochimaru's eyes. Minato blinked once, then twice and for good measure a third time. This was not the belly of the Shinigami. Because not even the bowels of the death god looked like a dank cave. And, most certainly, there weren't any Uchiha. Well, none that he had the pleasure of meeting. This young man in front of him, however, looked like your stereotypical Uchiha, aside from the weird hairdo. A strange feeling was festering his body, a body that felt brittle. As if it hadn't been moved in forever. His awareness returned to him and he felt the other people in the room. Glancing around himself, he found that a lot of dead people were there. At least, they should be. Well, so should he be, for that matter. You returned us with my own technique? Minato turned to the white-haired man and, well, that was the second Hokage. And the first. And, Hiruzen, he asked the man to his left, who was inspecting his hands. Damn, his throat felt strange. What is? I have returned you, the Uchiha said, to fight in a war. A war? A loud, boisterous voice asked. Again? You have to be kidding. He laughed loudly and shook his head. I remember putting a lot of effort into preventing wars, you know, boy. Minato recognized him as the first Hokage. Well, wasn't that a nice meeting? You failed, the Uchiha said flatly. And no other than Madara is behind this one? Minato sighed loudly. So, we doing this or what? Here was the perfect chance to see his son again. I'd like to enjoy this chance on freedom. The Uchiha smirked, though there was a sadness in his eyes that took Minato aback. Oh, you won't be having any fun at all, that I promise you. There were too many of them. Tayuya didn't know where she was going anymore. The sheer amount of Zetsu clones made it impossible to extend her senses past them to find Kakashi and the rest of the group she had been split from. As far as she could tell, she was definitely nearing the land of wind, given that the vegetation was decreasing steadily. But neither the fact that she was lost nor the masses of white fucker clones were as bad as the fact that some sick fuck seemed to have revived a whole lot of the scariest ninja to ever walk this earth. Which was why she found herself face to face with no less than Itachi Uchiha and whom she assumed to be Nagato Uzumaki, the guy with the Rinnegan. Her luck was nothing short of terrible. She eyed them wearily as they stepped out of the coffins. Could she even fight them? She had no desire to die, that much was clear. Maybe she could just... Interesting, the revived Itachi spoke, taking in his surroundings. It seems that this war hasn't been stopped after all. The red-haired man shook his head. A pity. His unsettling eyes found her. Another Uzumaki? How inconvenient, given the circumstances of our meeting. Tayuya huffed, you don't say, God complex. You couldn't just, not attack me, right? Itachi shook his head. I'm afraid not. Our bodies are not truly ours to control. Ugh, she sighed. Great. Just great. Where was Kakashi when you really needed him? Any advice? She asked hopefully. Itachi and Nagato exchanged a look. If you are as strong as the other Uzumaki, the Uchiha said, you could aid me in regaining control? You mean lover boy? Tayuya asked, scratching her chin. Well, I'm not as strong as him, but I guess I get as close as normal humans can get. Nagato smiled before grimacing as he was apparently forced to step out of the coffin as it sunk back into the ground. So you have met him then? I fucked him, Tayuya huffed, but I doubt that his dick will get me out of this one. Itachi stared at her in thinly veiled confusion. I suppose not, he said eventually before frowning. Ready yourselves, Uzumaki? You gonna tell me how to get you to stop trying to murder your ass yet? Tayuya asked, backing up slowly with her flute drawn. For now, focus on surviving, Itachi advised before suddenly charging at her. Tayuya really hated this war. I swear to Kami, that bastard just had to revive all of the awful ones. Tsunade growled out as she drove her heel into yet another reincarnation. She looked around the wide-open desert wildly. Their enemies' numbers were dwindling, which told her that this reanimation jutsu didn't work as well as it should, given that the numbers had begun to drop. Unfortunately for them, those that were still there and kicking were dropping the allied forces like flies since the former Kage had been summoned. After she and A had arrived on the battlefield to witness the third Raikage and the second Tsuchikage decimate their forces, Tsunade and A both knew that maybe sending their two strongest warriors away had been a mistake. The third Raikage was a monster, nothing short of it. She had, in fact, just punched him with almost full power and only succeeded in blowing him away. He didn't even seem to have a scratch on him and her hand stung in return. Stupid lightning armor. What was almost worse was the reanimated Tsuchikage, Mu. He was firing high-powered ninjutsu from all the nature types at them from various positions with his ability to fly and be as good as undetectable. She glanced up when she saw Inoki engage with him. Dust Release was a true menace as well, it held incredible power and the very air vibrated as they clashed. Out of all the Kage, Tsunade somehow felt herself as the weakest in sheer combat ability. Not that that bothered her. She was a medic after all and was simultaneously using Katsuyu to heal everyone on the battlefield. She was to no end grateful for her huge chakra reserves. That was until their masked adversary arrived. Obito observed the allied forces struggle against his army of reincarnations. Everything was going according to plan, yet the Jinchuriki had shown up. He knew that they would try to hide them away but didn't want to think that they had actually imprisoned them. That would be a major nuisance. He glanced at the second Tsuchikage as he floated above the battlefield. It should be about time to summon Madara. The allied shinobi didn't appear to be able to deal with the reanimated Raikage. The strongest spear and the strongest shield proved to be too powerful for them to defeat. That, however, changed rapidly once Kakashi and Guy arrived. My eternal rival. Guy boomed over the desert plain. I have found us a worthy opponent, he exclaimed and pointed at the reanimated Raikage. Kakashi let his neck crack loudly. You said something? He drawled, though his eye was focused on their opponent. Curse you and your cool and hip attitude, Kakashi. Guy whined. Though they hadn't made any indication of stopping their bickering, they both suddenly vanished. With a loud crack, they both solidly connected a heel with the forearms of the Raikage. His lightning armor crackled loudly against the attack but didn't budge. Both back flipped away from him. Kakashi let his neck crack one more. I expected a bit more. Indeed. Guy shouted, that was not as youthful as I had expected. Let us try again. They vanished again and rained blow upon blow on their enemy who, while obviously unable to attack, also didn't seem to take any damage at all. Suddenly Kakashi appeared a fair distance away and started a sequence of Hanselas. As soon as he stopped on the last one, he inhaled deeply. Fire release, flame dragon bullet. The gargantuan head of a dragon made of white-hot flame turned the sand in its path into glass as it roared in its onslaught at the Raikage. Guy used his opponent as a stepping stone to launch himself high in the air just before the jutsu could hit. The explosion was massive, the heat wave kept Guy aloft for longer than usual and the taijutsu master pulled his fist back in preparation. Chakra began to visibly gather in his fist before he suddenly dived down into the still raging fire of Kakashi's jutsu. Morning Star, he roared before the very earth shook under the impact. The pressure alone killed off the flames in an instant and drove the Raikage several dozen feet into the ground, leaving a smoking crater. Guy appeared again on Kakashi's side. Not youthful at all. Guy stated indignantly. He is a bit passive, isn't he? Kakashi drawled, twirling a kunai at the ring on its handle on his hand. No sooner had he finished the sentence, Kakashi suddenly bent backwards at an almost painful angle. The reanimated Raikage shot over him like a missile, one hand extended flat and straight ahead, and for a moment they were face to face before he zoomed on, cutting deep into the ninja that had still been surrounding him. Overbalanced as he was, Kakashi had to do a backflip to keep himself from falling. "I think I lost a few hair," he said, patting his head. Now that was youthful. Guy cheered, though only after he could tell that no one had been seriously injured in the attack. Just then, Guy jumped and the rackage shot through right underneath him. But this time, Guy had been prepared. He stomped down hard onto the man's back, redirecting his charge into the ground. A deep gouge followed his path, several dozen feet long, where the man emerged without a scratch and prepared again, for fingers of his hand extended this time. "That is, and I quote, troublesome," Kakashi admitted, raising his right hand. Lightning crackled in his palm before he shot off to meet his adversary. Killer Bee had been minding his own business, for the most part, as he watched over Naruto as the boy battled his tailed beast. Half of him was encased in the Kyuubi's chakra, the other half in what be assumed to be either Sage chakra or Naruto's own far more powerful chakra. Either way, the other half of him was glowing slightly with a whitish hue, the markings around his eyes had shifted from orange to blood red. Killer Bee couldn't tell if this was good or bad, but Naruto was apparently fine, so he didn't think about it too much. He frowned, however, when Naruto suddenly choked audibly. The boy coughed and gagged before opening his mouth as wide as possible as if he were about to puke. Not wanting to get hit, Bee jumped back. Much to his surprise, a crow wound its way out of Naruto's mouth. Even as it happened, Naruto remained in trance. "Oh, what the fuck?" he exclaimed and went to grab the feathered beast, but it eluded the attempt and instead flew straight at the next wall. Instead of hitting it, however, it passed right though. There was no way that could be good. He worried his lips, frowning at the wall the crow had disappeared through. "Shit," he cursed before he opened the sealed chamber. Yamato jumped back from the door in surprise. "What's going on?" he asked. "Is Naruto okay?" "Go watch over him," Bee instructed roughly. "I need to go." Before Yamato could so much as protest, Bee had already dashed off in pursuit of the crow. Tayuya cursed as she was pulled towards Nagato and the weird-ass rhinoceros he had summoned. She slammed 3 chains into the ground and held herself there while 2 more struck the few kunai that Itachi was throwing her way out of the air. Fighting 2 opponents that were significantly more powerful than herself was tiring, even if they seemed to hold back. Almost as tiring as shagging Naruto. "What the hell are we even waiting for?" she hollered at the Uchiha. "Didn't you say there was a way to get you out of this?" "Be patient," he returned. "It was not how I had imagined using this, so it will take some time." "What is going to take its time, you bastard?" Tayuya shouted, diving out of the way of Nagato's black spikes. She rolled into a crouch and blew a ball of fire at the Uzumaki, but it was immediately absorbed. Ugh, she was not made to fight them. "A war is something I don't need fucking with my life again," she said, shaking her head. "Life is war," Sakura said distantly. Looking up, she said, "It's true, isn't it? Both lead to death." There was something deeply unsettling to her words, something that chilled Tayuya to the bone. The night was too dark, the air too still. Something was wrong. Very wrong. She held her stomach protectively. "We survived," she said, more to herself than to anyone else. "Right?" Tayuya didn't like this war at all. Not that she would have liked any other war for that matter, but she was pretty sure that nothing could top this bullshit. First, there were the reincarnations. A lot of them, if not all of them. Tayuya had been unlucky enough to run into no other than Itachi Mofo Uchiha and Nagato Uzumaki. While it had been nice, sort of, to meet a distant cousin, it sucked ass that aside from his mouth, he couldn't control himself. Kinda like Naruto when he saw her naked. Heh. How she could be horny in the middle of a bloody war was beyond her. Tayuya had no idea how she survived that for as long as she did until that weird-ass crow showed up and did some wonky shit to Itachi, but she was kinda proud of herself for not ending up as a stain on the forest ground. The crow did its weird shit, hypnotized Itachi, and then it was more or less over. With Itachi it was far easier fighting Nagato like that, but it still seemed nowhere near enough to defeat him when suddenly the octopus asshole showed up that was supposed to be with Naruto. But because woe betide the rapping fools, Octofool thought it was a good idea to throw his damn tentacle arm at Nagato, who promptly absorbed that stuff. Tayuya didn't know why, but it felt like some bad omen. Could the chakra be sent to Madara? Did Octo asshole just fuck them all? For his balls, she hoped not. The main battlefield was easy to find, considering that a fucking meteor dropped right on top of it. Not to mention the second one. But when Tayuya arrived, shit was already going south. Madara was a freaking monster. He held so much God's damn chakra, it overpowered Tayuya's senses. It was the same with Naruto, though it was more like being wrapped in a thick blanket with him, unlike this drowning in an ocean shit she got from Madara. But because Madara and Obito alone weren't already weird enough, there were the other Hokage. With all the reincarnations that were hellbent on gutting her, Tayuya didn't really get too close to them, but she was pretty sure that this one guy looked a lot like Naruto, just older. Was that the fourth? Not like she could see him properly, the weirdo was flashing all across the battlefield. She stumbled over Tsunade, who looked like someone had cut her in half before she somehow stitched herself back together. Just above her navel, a ceiling tag was smoldering. Karen put a lot of work into these. Her hand touched the tag that was hidden underneath her shirt, on her shoulder. That thing would keep her going for a while. "Oi, Granny," she called out. "Get your ass up, this mess ain't over yet." Tsunade growled as she climbed to her feet again. "You start calling me that and I'll punch you and your dumbass husband," she huffed. She looked around wildly to assess the situation. Her eyes widened when she saw the other Kage. "What the fuck?" "Yeah," Tayuya agreed. "This shit is getting crazy." Suddenly the air was filled with the infernal screeching of metal grinding against metal, and Tayuya barely ducked under a three-pronged kunai that had been deflected into her direction. With a snarl on her lips, she rounded on the blonde Hokage, who appeared a few feet away from them. "Watch it, asshole," she growled, a singular chain rattling menacingly in the air behind her. He turned around, confusion evident on his face, before his eyes widened and he gaped at her. "Kekushina?" He yelped and almost failed to jump out of Obito's way as the Uchiha asshole slammed his pansy-ass fan into the ground, kicking up a lot of dirt. "Kushina? Wasn't that Lover Boy's mother?" She couldn't look all that much like her, could she? 'Cause that would have been pretty fucking strange. "No, I'm not, dickhead." "And how'd you know her?" she hissed at the man when he landed unsteadily beside her and Tsunade. "Minato." Tsunade exclaimed, "Who the hell reanimated you and the other Kage?" Tayuya glowered at her. Damn bimbo could have let the asshole answer the question. "That would be me." Tayuya rolled her eyes. Oh hell no. Was that who she thought it was? True to her suspicion, yet another goddamn Uchiha appeared on the battlefield. Sasuke emo is live Uchiha. Behind him, Tayuya caught a glimpse of Guy and B viciously kicking Obito across the crater the meteor had left. "You," she spat in disbelief. "Your emo ass couldn't use that technique if it was required for being a bitch-ass brooder." Sasuke's permanent frown soured and he glared at her. "Who are you again?" Tayuya grit her teeth. "I am Dash." That was as far as she got. Obito appeared right in the middle of them all. Minato, who had still been frowning at her with a thoughtful expression, was caught off guard and couldn't dodge the chakra receiver that was plunged into his stomach. Tayuya, Tsunade and even Sasuke, all three of them reached out to attack Obito, but a sudden surge of chakra blew them backwards. The mark on Tayuya's neck suddenly flared as she could feel the Kyuubi's chakra in front of her. But Naruto wasn't there. Where did it come from? She decided that this wasn't the time to even fucking wonder what was going on anymore and instead decided to save the blonde asshole. One of her chains missed Obito by a hair's breadth but forced him to move away, the bubbling mass of dark crimson chakra following after him where it was absorbed into his arm. A vicious grin broke out on his unmasked face and Tayuya feared the worst. Summoning, he roared as he flashed through a couple of hand seals, demonic statue of the outer path. Yeah, she was going to fry some octoballs once all this was over. Naruto opened his eyes and felt, not different at all. He frowned, blinking against the strange light in the temple room. He opened his mouth to say something, but coughed up a few black feathers instead. "What the fuck?" he exclaimed, still gagging. "Are you alright?" "Yamato, how in the world did he get in here?" asked, the seal in his hand a red burning zero. Spitting more feathers, Naruto nodded. "Ugh, I guess. How come you don't remember the crow Itachi Uchiha shoved down your throat?" Kurama rumbled back. His voice wasn't as loud as usual and it didn't sound like he was growling at him from a great distance away. Oh, yeah. That was a thing. He really did remember that. Must have slipped his mind. Eating live crows wasn't a hobby he'd ever adopt. The 10-tail towered over them all, a grayish monster with 10 appendages that ended in human-like hands with this glaring red eye that was supposedly the Rinne Sharingan. Tayuya would have cursed, had she not been forced to throw herself out of the way of one of those giant hands that crushed down onto the rocky battlefield. "Fall back," someone shouted over the rumble of earth, but Tayuya remained, glaring death at Obito and Madara, standing atop the creature's head. "Get down here you cocksuckers," she roared up at them. Madara's laugh, who had somehow regained a new body, boomed over the battlefield as more and more the allied shinobi were forced to back away from the flailing monstrosity. "You," he called out, "you amuse me, little girl. Let's see if you can dance as well." "Dance? What the fuck are you Dash?" But before she could finish the sentence, the 10 tails unleashed an unholy shriek, forcing her to cover her ears. It opened its giant maw underneath the eye as wide as it could before vomiting a mass of gray that streamed onto the battlefield. From the gooey mass, countless monstrosities emerged in various sizes, some almost as big as the 10 tails itself. With a snarl, Tayuya put her flute to her lips and a haunting melody spread over the battlefield. Chains of chakra erupted from her back, dancing and swaying with her music, slicing and striking with every note that left her lips. What a wonderful dance! Madara crowed in maniacal glee. He surely would have jumped down to meet her in battle if not for the fact that he was attached to the 10 tails. You couldn't waltz for shit, she roared up at him before charging forwards, determined to get the Uchiha out of her way. The sooner this shit was over the sooner she'd get back to Naruto. Boy, she'd beat the shit out of him for leaving her alone. Come here you red-eyed assholes. You better hurry. You don't say. Naruto spat, tearing straight through a tree branch instead of avoiding it. Why did this shit take so long? You suck at studying, Kurama told him. Now hurry, the 10 tails has already been summoned. Stop being a bitch about it and at least boost me a bit. There was a moment of silence before his legs suddenly erupted into searing pain. Naruto almost bit his tongue off, but immediately felt the immense power that accompanied the chakra. That stings, he hissed, but accelerated anyways, moving too fast to really avoid the trees of the forest. Unfortunately the Turtle Island had chosen to make things complicated and had delivered them to the other side of the gods' damned continent. He had to go through the entirety of the Land of Fire to reach the Land of Wind, where the 10 tails was already about. Quit whining and move. I swear to the Shinigami I will put a muzzle on you. It wasn't fair. Really, it wasn't. Neither Madara nor Obito even had to step down from their high and oh so fucking ugly horse with 9 tails too many to win this battle. Tayuya didn't even get a chance to attack, being busy defending herself against all those ugly-ass monstrosities and the constant hails of wooden spikes that the 10 tails kept raining upon them all. Sasuke, damn him, was throwing huge snakes at the 10 tails but they never got close enough, while Sakura, Karin and Sari were more or less permanently engulfed in healing chakra as they did their best to keep everyone alive. Tsunade put all her focus into sustaining Katsuyu's healing ability and was no longer participating in the battle. The Hokage, the dead ones, fuck them too, were freaking scary but even they didn't get shit done. Aside from a literal forest appearing here and there, with the occasional tsunami and fireballs as big as the Hokage Tower, nothing really advanced. Even with them going around, the 10 tails was battling them to a standstill. Of course the octopus had no impact at all and Tayuya felt that she needed to shove every spike of wood the 10 tails had shot at them up his ass. Gods how she hated that guy right now. She backflipped 18 times in a row, of which she was fucking proud, and landed near the only Uchiha she didn't feel like murdering at the moment. Oi! Emo ass, she shouted, raising her chains like a shield wall in front of her, help me get your family off that thing. He had barely time to scowl at her before the 4th Hokage appeared in between them with Karin, who blinked confusedly into the round. Did I die? She asked, still blinking rapidly. Yo, Tayuya waved at her, took the blonde Dunderhead Express, didn't ya? The 4th scowled at her. Sasuke actually fucking laughed and Karin was still not sure how she even got here. The plan was, actually, quite simple. Simple, not easy. All they had to do was get one of Blondie's fancy kunai up to the 10 tails head. Oh joy. You are not throwing me, Sasuke denied flatly, sneering at her. Maybe you're right, Tayuya admitted before smirking curly. Throwing with shit ain't going to do us any good. Just throwing the damn kunai is not an option? Karin asked, ducking nonchalantly as one of Tayuya's chains stabbed over her and a 10 tails spawned to death. Sighing loudly, Minato drew one of his kunai from Kami nose where the revived fool found them all and chucked it almost lazily at the towering monster. A piece of wood slammed into the weapon's path halfway, scattering it into the battlefield. So it's not, Karin noted dryly. How about going underground? Tayuya nodded, leisurely leaning her head to the side and out of the way of the kunai Karin threw at the ugly, octopus-like monster that had approached. Not too bad of an idea. I just don't fancy getting roasted like these IWA guys that tried to ambush that thing. They were incinerated in their tunnels. Then from above, Sasuke said simply. We just throw you at them from straight above? Why would that work, you prick? Tayuya huffed. Didn't your fancy eyes catch the wood spear that was shot at the kunai? They did, Sasuke hissed back, scowling something fierce. But they also saw that thing's eye followed the kunai's path. So it has to see it, the 4th mused, or feel it underground. That's one weak-ass way of thinking, Tayuya muttered. How do you even know it has to see it? Do you want to get this over with or not? Sasuke snapped. If not, we are just going to throw you at it. Tayuya was about to tear the emo brat a new one when Karin cleared her throat. Guys, she began, I think something's wrong. Flipping Sasuke the bird, Tayuya turned to look at the 10 tails and... What? Is it, laying an egg? The fourth maid, squinting at the beast. I guess. Or maybe it finally decided to spawn more creatures, Tayuya remarked dryly. Whatever it is, Karen said, it certainly forced it to close its eye. Tayuya grinned. Does that mean we can throw the emo at it? Spawning the world tree was incredibly taxing. Not exactly on chakra, but more on sheer concentration. If not for Madara's help, Obito may not have been able to form the seed in the first place. And if the tree wasn't the most vital part of the plan, Obito wouldn't even have bothered with it. But fact was, that without the tree and its fruit the Rinne Sharingan wouldn't be complete. They needed to reflect the eye to the moon somehow after all, and that was what the blossom was for. It just needed a wee bit of chakra. Thankfully, the Shinobi Alliance had unknowingly provided the largest supply there was. Obito had briefly questioned why no one truly wondered how he would even invoke a genjutsu powerful enough to ensnare all of the earth or where he would get that much chakra from. Their ignorance was truly his bliss. Bliss, however, only lasted so long as suddenly something slammed into his midestion. It was too late to stop the tree from being planted but certainly served to disconnect him from the Ten Tails body. He was toppled over by the projectile, which bounced off him, rolled a few feet and screeched to a halt right behind Madara. The projectile turned out to be Sasuke Uchiha, who promptly served Madara's link as well with his sword. You are too late, Obito drawled. Our plan is almost complete. There is nothing you can dash. It was then, and far too late, that both Obito and Madara spotted the kunai that was now embedded into the 10 tails right in front of them. And with a yellow flash, Obito's world exploded into pain. Not bad of a throw, huh? Tayuya mused, peering into the distance as she tried to observe what was going on atop the 10 tails head. Karen huffed, scanning their surroundings. She spotted something in the distance, eyes narrowing. She briefly hugged Tayuya. Don't do something stupid, okay? Gotta go. She sprinted off, probably to someone who needed help. Yeah, Tayuya called after her, but you tell me if one of those idiots bites you. I'll bite back for you. Tayuya whistled appreciatively when a Rasengan exploded on the 10 tails head. Mine would have been cooler, she scoffed. In her moment of respite, Tayuya wished Naruto would be here already. She decided to take a moment to expand her senses, but he was still not within her range and, oh shit, there he was. Not even that far away. Just a few minutes and dash. Roarg. Tayuya was forced to cover her ears as the monstrous roar escaped the 10 tails. Its already deformed body began to twist, its head suddenly beginning to shrink. No, it was sucked away into something. Just then the Hokage and Sasuke appeared beside her in a brief flash of light. What the fuck did you do? She spat. Sasuke merely glared at forth. You should have gone for the head. Minato scowled. I tore his heart into pieces. With a strangely distant and dampened sounding roar, the 10 tails' entire head was sucked into the vortex that was building above it. The fuck is that? Sasuke roughly pushed Minato away from himself. He's absorbing it. Merging with it. He will dash. Become the 10 tails Jinchuriki, Minato finished gravely. Tayuya sighed in exasperation. Fuck you too. Next time, we're throwing me. When Naruto arrived at the battlefield, it felt as if he had missed something big. Literally. The 10 tails was nowhere near in sight, save for the many abominations that were crawling about. But there, in the distance, a mass of chakra so humongous it dwarfed Kurama's lingered in the air. He had barely managed to make out Tayuya's chakra when suddenly everything went white and he was forced to close his eyes in pain. He opened his eyes and almost immediately closed them again in pain. The explosion of light that Obito caused seemed to linger in the air, and before he knew it, something slammed into his side, lifting him off the ground forcefully, and he was sent flying across the rocky wasteland. He turned midair to land on his feet, but before he even touched down, a chain wrapped around his midsection. He knew the chakra, could have told it apart in a mass of millions. Tayuya, he shouted loudly, laughing as he soared towards the place where she most likely stood. He didn't bother looking. But maybe he should have, because he slammed head first into the giant rock that Tayuya had used as cover from the explosion. You idiot, she snorted as he slid down the steep surface, look where you're going. He shook his aching head before he laughed again. Gods, I missed you. She smiled devilishly. I bet, lover boy. Tayuya was about to introduce her lips to his when he suddenly pushed her out of the way of what appeared to be a black cannonball that utterly destroyed the rock behind them. You surely have bigger problems than a reunion, Obito's voice gloated from above. The female Uzumaki pushed herself up with a snarl on her lips. Oh fuck you, you holy shit, she exclaimed in shock. Obito had changed a lot after absorbing the 10 tails. His hair was now white, his skin cream-colored and visibly brittle. Strange, horn-like appendages stood sharply out of his forehead and shoulders, red flame hovered at their tips. His two different eyes, the Rinnegan and the Sharingan, looked calmly down at her. The pitch-black monk staff in his hand gave off a very strange sensation to Tayuya's enhanced senses, as did the black spheres that floated behind him in a perfect circle. The one he had shot at them rejoined the others. "Damn," Tayuya said, "you're even uglier now." Obito's lips twitched but he remained calm. "Talk as much as you will. This is as good as over." He tapped a finger against his forehead. "Any time now, the Rinna Sharingan will awaken." Naruto came to stand at Tayuya's side. "You wish. Madara has the other half of the Rinnegan. You can't do shit without it." He was right, of course, but Obito didn't care. Madara was still busy playing it out with Hashirama, but his body was far stronger and would regenerate, unlike Hashirama's. Why Orochimaru decided to help them was beyond him, but that was of no matter. First, he needed to dispose of Naruto. The boy was strong enough to cause problems with invoking the eternal Tsukuyomi, and now that the fourth Hokage... Obito's thoughts ended abruptly when his head was almost pierced by a kunai, one that without a doubt belonged to Minato. The man in question appeared next to the kunai and aimed a Rasengan at his chest without any preamble, but Obito was stronger now. He caught the devilish spiral of chakra with his bare hand, reversed the rotation and squashed the ball in his fist before driving it straight through Minato's midsection. Or so he thought. Minato was replaced by Naruto, a clone that immediately disappeared before another Rasengan, this one disturbingly red, was shoved in his face, far faster than Minato's had been. A Truth Seeker orb moved to block it, but the ball of condensed chakra was shredded away in under a second. Obito's Sharingan eye widened before it spun madly, and he used Kamui to move the deadly attack into the other dimension. He tried hard not to blink, it proved to be deadly around these people. "Your efforts are futile," he had wanted to say, but yet another Rasengan flew his way and Obito did not wait to see if his Truth Seeker orb could block this one, so he flickered away. He glared at the projectile, watching it soar through the air until it collided with the world tree, causing an enormous explosion that shook the giant tree visibly. He glared at Tayuya, who had been the one to throw the sphere at him. "I didn't know you learned how to do that." Naruto gushed, "That was awesome." Tayuya squared her shoulders. "Course it was," she said. All the air left her when Obito's leg drove it out of her lungs with a vicious kick to her midsection. But the impact felt wrong and, true enough, Tayuya turned out to be a shadow clone. But not just any clone. No, it was a clone that substituted with a multitude of Minato's kunai before it dispelled and sent them flying everywhere. Obito did not curse, he didn't have the time. Instead, he immediately holed up in a sphere he formed out of several Truth Seeker orbs. And not a second too late. Hundreds of impacts per second rained down upon his defenses and he had to focus on keeping the barrier stable. This could mean trouble. He needed Madara over here. As Minato rained hell in kunai form on Obito's defenses, Naruto frowned deeply in thought. "Did you see how he scowled when you hit the tree?" She nodded a bit, not breaking her concentration as she took in more nature chakra as well as the chakra Naruto let flow into her through the mark on her neck. Damn, it felt so good. That was extremely distracting. Getting horny now was definitely not the way to get out of this war. "That ugly thing must be important," she hissed when she was finished. "So we blow it up?" "We fucking burn it down," Tayuya agreed. Naruto grinned. "That's my girl? And don't you forget it, lover boy." They rushed off to get to the tree. Naruto briefly locked eyes with his father. Something passed in that millisecond and both knew that it was now or never. A hassle. And nothing more. Obito lightly grunted with minimal effort before a pitch-black lance suddenly ripped out of the sphere, piercing Minato's reanimated body straight through the shoulder. The man's eyes widened. "Got you, sensei," Obito said, emerging from his shell. "You are indeed fast." He floated up to him, a cruel smile stretching his lips. But not fast enough. Minato tried to channel enough chakra for another teleport but found it unresponsive. He frowned. "You have not earned this strength, Obito. And you should be dead," he replied evenly. "You failed, sensei. You had to seal the nine tails into your own son only to die and leave him behind. I will not fall. Madara and I, we will give this world the peace it needs." Minato growled at him and gripped the lance in his shoulder. "No one wants your peace." Then he pushed, as hard as his body allowed. The lance had gone too far through him to allow pushing off it, so, reanimated body in mind, he tore the lance right through his body. His shoulder crumbled like clay, his left arm falling away, but he couldn't feel it anyways. As soon as the black lance lost contact with his body, he vanished, leaving Obito to float over the battlefield. "You only prolong the inevitable," the Jinchuriki roared before he turned to the largest chakra source he could feel in his surroundings. His eyes zeroed in on a man with silver hair, one Sharingan eye staring coldly at him. "Kakashi," he hissed. Kakashi remained silent, but even Obito could see that he made a face underneath his mask. "You are not Obito," he said after a while. "The Obito I once knew is long dead." You are an abomination. The Jinchuriki laughed. Abomination? Is that what you think? No, Kakashi, I have merely become more. I became what I needed to be to bring this world to peace. Lightning crackled in Kakashi's hand. He stared at it for a second before extending it towards Obito. To protect my comrades, the world, and the old Obito. I will kill you. Obito's laugh stilled and he glared hatefully at Kakashi. You? Protect, he spat. You are the one that failed to protect Rin. You are the one who got me to where I am. Kakashi began walking towards him, lightning still crackling in his hand. I know. He stopped shortly before reaching him and pulled down his mask. And now, I will fight for my redemption. Minato appeared midair at Naruto's side, who stood with Tayuya at the base of the god tree. The resurrected fourth Hokage looked curiously at the kunai that hung from Naruto's belt. Got that one from Kakashi, huh? He asked. Naruto grinned. Yeah. He glanced at Minato's missing arm. Lost that one to Obito, huh? When Minato nodded, Tayuya snorted. Way to prove who the better student was. Obito could have been such an amazing man, Minato sighed, but now? Don't worry, Dad, Naruto said, thrusting the kunai in his hand. We'll put this freak to rest so your student can rest in peace. Minato merely nodded, looking back to where Kakashi was now fighting Obito. Let's finish this quickly. What did you see? That fucking tree is important to tenfold asshole, Tayuya concluded, so we burn it down. Well, the Hokage sighed, can't say I disagree with that. Naruto lightly elbowed his father's side. You better don't, he advised sagely, else she'll hog the blanket. Minato nodded thoughtfully. Your mother was the same. Kami knows I'd freeze to death if I said something wrong. Or insulted ramen. Tayuya interrupted. I am not his mother. Minato laughed. No, you aren't, he readily agreed. Aside from the fact that you are an Uzumaki, you couldn't even have been sisters. It was true, Kushina wasn't that, coarse. And not that violent. And not that possessive. And vulgar. Definitely not that vulgar. You bet, Granddad, she huffed before turning on the heel to capture Naruto's lips in a searing kiss that left him grinning like a loon. Granddad. Minato mouthed hollowly. Naruto just shrugged. Anyways, the tree. Right, Minato agreed, mentally noting that he was not that old. You got anything big enough to blow that tree up, Granddad? Tayuya asked him. He gave him a sour look. No, nothing that big. And I'm not that old? She shrugged. Maybe. But I am pregnant. That makes you a granddad, Granddad. You are what? Naruto screamed. Minato felt like his living body would have fainted, might even have a stroke. I'm kidding. Tayuya laughed, just messing with Granddad here. Naruto looked about ready to die. Don't do that, he hissed, that wasn't funny. You can't be pregnant here. But the look on Granddad's face was, Tayuya argued, laughing loudly. And indeed, Minato looked more dead than he already was, the sickly white skin now almost transparent as he gaped at her and his son in disbelief. Now, the tree. Naruto shook his head, not at all amused. Yeah. Can't we just, fell it? Is your wind release strong enough for that? Minato asked, his voice still somewhat hollow. Don't know, Naruto admitted. Let's see. He walked closer to the tree and placed his hand flat against its surface. He took a deep breath and began concentrating. Tayuya noticed how his arm tensed for a brief second before there was an ear-shattering whistling noise and a mass of sawdust exploded away from Naruto's hand. There, horizontally carved in the tree, was a deep gash that dug into the wood for about 50 meters. He turned around to his gaping father and his grinning wife. Yeah, I suppose this could work. Madara laughed loudly as Hashirama was forced to jump out of the way of a fire dragon bullet. You have grown weak, Hashirama, he roared, unleashing yet another torrent of fire at the man from midair. The first Hokage responded with a wall of thick wood that exploded forth from underneath his own feet, shooting him up into the air, a giant tree branch not far behind him. He weaved through 80 hand seals faster than the eye could blink and the wood began to morph into the head of a giant dragon. It gained a humongous amount of momentum and shot down at the Uchiha just as the man touched ground. The impact shook the battlefield and showered the immediate surroundings with splinters of wood and stone. Hashirama landed in the very center of the crater he had created. Come on out, Madara, he called, as if this was enough to take you down. A jagged stone spike shimmered briefly before the Uchiha, completely unharmed, stepped out from the genjutsu, his lone Rinnegan eye pulsing with power. Without your beloved eyes, the Hokage continued, you are just as weak. A growl escaped the man and he pointed his battle fan at his opponent. I am not weak, Hashirama, he roared, I possess the eye of a god and soon, when I have both, I will attain godhood. And then, you fool, you will get to watch this world achieve true peace. The Hokage shook his head. Your mind has been twisted when I first bested you and it has now become nothing but a shadow of my former friend. He pointed a finger at his rival. You will lose again. That I can promise you. With a battle cry, fueled by rage and hatred, Madara charged. Let's dance. Sasuke discarded of the 10 tails monster with a swift swipe of his sword. These abominations that the 10 tails had spawned didn't disappear, even after Obito absorbed it. He had not expected this war to escalate that quickly. Orochimaru's rather practical change of heart did nothing short of surprise him. Then again, it was all just his way of saving his own skin. Typical for the damn snake. He glanced to his side when the third Hokage and Tsunade landed at his side. I never asked, but what brought you here, you damn brat? Tsunade asked none too kindly. He didn't want to answer. Not really. My brother lived and died for the village to be safe, he said eventually, eyes fixed on the god tree. I won't let his death be in vain, no longer. If you think I'll let you do as you like, you're dead wrong. I will see my brother's wishes through to the end. If it means fighting this war, so be it. Tsunade glanced at Hiruzen, who was staring long and hard at Sasuke. Your brother was a great man, he said. He sacrificed everything for Konoha. Maybe, if not for Danzo, things could have gone differently. Danzo is dead, Sasuke hissed, clutching the scar that was now just below his heart. I saw to that. The third Hokage nodded. I see. I wouldn't fault you. An explosion rocked the ground and they all saw a giant wooden dragon give through the air. I still can't believe Orochimaru brought you back, Sasuke commented. The selfish bastard? Selfish he might be, Hiruzen told him, but we are here now because of him. It is not enough to redeem himself, but it is something. Naruto will still kill him, Tsunade remarked. Sasuke snorted. I do not doubt that. He glanced at the tree again where, at its base, a humongous amount of chakra was gathering. The dobe has gotten strong. Tsunade raised an eyebrow. Was that a compliment? I was merely stating a fact, Sasuke deflected. But I can't say I'm not impressed. I wonder, what got him fighting like that? Surely, it's no longer my sorry ass. Of course not, Tsunade laughed humorlessly. The knucklehead got himself a wife. The redhead? Sasuke asked. The redhead, Tsunade confirmed. The Uchiha snorted again. I'd be running, not fighting, in his case. Naruto is married? Hiruzen asked, mouth hanging open in disbelief. It was arranged, Tsunade admitted, but it worked out better than you'd think. He really does love her. Why are we getting all cheesy when there's a war going on around us? Sasuke asked, rolling his eyes. You're just jealous, the Hokage both told him. I am not dash. Fine, fuck it. I'm jealous. Can we go back to fighting? Please. Better do. Go help out Kakashi, we deal with Madara, Tsunade instructed before she and Hiruzen vanished in a swirl of red leaves. Sasuke begrudgingly turned in the direction Kakashi was fighting the Jinchuriki. Me and jealous, he grumbled. As if. Kakashi knew that a Jinchuriki in control of their tailed beasts were absolutely terrifying. But what almost terrified him the most, was that he could keep up. The scroll Tayuya had thrown at him was proving to be the most useful he had ever learned. Well, aside from how to please a woman hands-free. That was in a league of its own. Maybe he should teach Naruto that. Jiraiya would have approved. Anyhow. Sage arts were goddamn overpowered. Senpo, Raikiri. The normal jutsu itself was damn powerful already and could cleave solid steel in twain but fueled with nature chakra. The technique was about 5 times its usual size, its outlines displayed sharp black edges and the usual electric blue was almost white. Obito was just as surprised as Kakashi when the jutsu unloaded enough power to melt a hole into the ground, followed by a thunderclap loud enough to rattle Kakashi's bones. Obito reappeared from the Kamui dimension, but was missing a goddamn arm. It regrew quickly enough, but it was still the most damage anyone had done to him during the war. Kakashi, black markings curling around his eyes with one white slash down his own eye that mimicked the scar over his Sharingan, was staring at his sizzling and still electrified hand in shock. Well damn, he breathed, that's a lot of damage. You taught Kakashi how to use Sage Mode? Tayuya shrugged. Not really. I gave him the scroll you made and told him to observe my chakra when we trained. I figured he could take it from there. Naruto merely nodded in understanding, then turned to his father, who sat beside him. Do you think it's enough? Maybe, Minato responded, his hand firmly clasping Naruto's brightly glowing fist, but we better have too much than too little. The tree already regenerated the groove you made. Indeed, the tree now appeared as if no one had ever even scratched it. Tayuya didn't like the feel she got from that thing with her Sage Mode. It felt alive, more alive than chakra usually did and even more alive than Orochimaru had ever felt to her. It was a violent thing, a part of the living, breathing evil that Obito had absorbed. The closer she got, the more it curled, the more it pulsed, reacting to her presence. You sure we shouldn't add my chakra as well? She asked. Naruto's gaze found her eyes. He felt the need to kiss her. We don't know if this will knock out Obito as well. If we both go down, we will need you to get us out alive. I could just kill him, Tayuya huffed. Naruto smiled at her. I'm sure you could, but I still want to beat his ass for literally killing half of Kurama. Minato laughed sheepishly. Yeah, well, he got me by surprise. Dumb fuck. Kurama growled inside Naruto's head. An explosion rocked the ground hard enough for Tayuya to stumble. She whirled around to where a huge, burning dragon of wood was blown away from a blue shimmering skeletal shroud with huge glowing swords. She had almost forgotten about Madara. What will we do about the Uchiha? She asked, frowning as what she knew to be the Sharingan Susanoo split a tree in half that had suddenly sprouted from the ground. We can only hope that the other Kage can handle him. Have you seen Gaara? Naruto asked, shielding his eyes from his steadily brighter glowing fist. The sheer amount of chakra he held there was not almost blowing up his coils. He stopped Madara's fucking meteor with the old geezer. Then he helped defend the weaker ninja when these monsters spawned. She looked over to where she knew most of the others to be, in a sort of emergency field base. Over there, I'd say. Sakura should be there too. Naruto nodded, opening his still clenched fist. A small, pure white sphere, barely bigger than an eyeball, hovered just an inch above his palm. Tayuya looked at it in wonder. It was beautiful and she could feel so much from Naruto's chakra there, it tingled the spot on her neck. Oi, lover boy, she whispered, just loud enough for him to hear. When we get back, we gonna make a baby? Naruto almost dropped the sphere. Hiruzen drove his adamantine staff through a dozen of monsters at once and chucked them all in the direction of the tree. Kakashi was still keeping Obito busy, and judging from the density of the chakra that was gathering at the base of the tree, Naruto was working on something. He was just about to head over to them when his senses screamed at him to duck. A blade grazed the back of his helmet, and before he could so much as blink, a foot collided with his face, launching him backwards. He twisted midair but was caught by Sasuke, who braced his fall and brought both of them down safely, facing Madara. Shouldn't he be helping Kakashi? Can't let him break you yet, the Uchiha commented, drawing his blade. Thoughtful of you, Hiruzen returned dryly. Hashirama, who was missing a piece of his left side just underneath his arm, flickered to their side. Your regeneration is so unfair, he whined to Madara, who appeared unharmed. Merely a proof of my superiority, the man drawled. Now, 3 against 1. He smirked. That might actually be fair. Hiruzen could see Sasuke's grip on his weapon tighten. I will wipe that grin off your fucking face, he snarled. Madara spread his arms wide. Try it, boy. That's enough. Tayuya could see that Naruto was straining to keep all that chakra in one place. How the hell will we unleash all that? She asked. She really doubted that simply throwing it at the tree would do any good. Tayuya also feared that, if that thing exploded, she didn't want to be too close to it. Naruto shrugged tiredly, balancing the sphere on his palm. I don't know if I can manipulate it to cut. It might just explode in my face. Minato stood up but staggered, struggling to remain standing. This body, he wheezed, is not regenerating at all. Not even chakra. The fact that it survived the 9 tails being extracted is already a damn miracle. Tayuya huffed. Suck it up, Granddad. Now, do we blow up the damn tree? We could leave it here with a clone, Naruto mused. The clone could disrupt it so it would go off. That would kill everyone who is too close, Minato objected. We need to cut it down, so we don't destroy everything everything around us. Sounds like basic wind manipulation to me, Tayuya said, shrugging. Father and son gave her a deadpan look. Another violent explosion from where Kakashi was fighting Obito shook the battlefield. The abominations spawned by the 10 tails were decreasing in numbers now that the thing was sealed, and the allied shinobi forces managed to push in on Madara and assault him with a few jutsu, as the man was already assaulted by the rest of the Kage, minus the second Hokage, who was busy keeping the tailed beast bombs from obliterating whole civilizations, which were still fired by the biggest of those weird-ass monsters. Tayuya figured that he couldn't keep this up forever. She leaned against Naruto's back as he stood. Need some chakra to help? She purred. Yours? Naruto asked. Always. Minato cleared his throat loudly. Would you not flirt right now? They steadfastly ignored him as Tayuya began to pour her chakra out for Naruto to take. Just as gently as she let it flow, Naruto took it in, her chakra the eye of the storm amidst the torrents of frantically moving chakra. He gathered it at the very center of his palm and compressed it for a few, valuable seconds. Even though it was straining him to his very limits, he kissed Tayuya before he stood and placed his palm against the tree once more. Obito could not believe it. Kakashi was matching him blow for blow, and he didn't even seem to be tiring. He, on the other hand, could feel the strain of the Ten Tails chakra on his already messed up body. Sage chakra, which Kakashi seemed to be able to use indefinitely, hurt like hell when it hit, almost as if the Ten Tails couldn't stand the energy it radiated. And radiate it did. With his Rinnegan eye, the chakra was almost blindingly bright once Kakashi had molded it with his own. The fireball he had to evade was hot enough to melt the very ground underneath his feet, but it wasn't just the power that had increased. A fist caught his jaw with crushing force. His teeth gnashed against each other and Obito was blown away, far into the sky. He reeled, trying to regain his balance midair. Kakashi hadn't just gotten fast. Faster than before and too fast for his Sharingan to see. Too fast for his Sharingan. The very idea sounded ludicrous, but it was reality. He raised his staff just in time to meet a kunai's blade, coated in almost black lightning. Obito heard his weapon creak ominously and pushed himself away from the attack, towards the ground. No longer was there any talk. Kakashi was dead set on ending him, on utterly obliterating him. Obito, in the very back of his mind, felt something akin to fear as he met Kakashi's cold, empty gaze. Both Obito and Kakashi had long since ceased to use words to mold their chakra, so when the silver-haired man suddenly spoke, Obito knew he was in for it and braced himself. Sage art, Kakashi breathed calmly, grasping the wrist of his right hand, the palm of the left raised skywards. Lament of the Thunder God. Lightning, black and golden to equal measure, bloomed in Kakashi's hand. But it didn't spark like electricity, didn't arc like lightning. It moved almost calmly in his hand, and Obito felt like time had been slowed down. Kakashi's eyes, focused on the branches of lightning that grew in his palm like a tree blossoming, snapped up to meet his. Up until then, Obito hadn't even realized just how much chakra there was gathered in front of him. It was an ungodly mass, the combined amount of Kakashi's chakra with the exact same amount in natural energy. The tiny speck in the very back of his mind that might have been fear suddenly clawed at his mind. This is bad, it told him. This will end me, it screamed. But Obito didn't even think about that. He was beyond powerful. Nothing Kakashi could do would ever result in his defeat. Too late he realized that the fear had paralyzed him for just over 2 seconds. That was all the time Kakashi had needed. He rammed his feet into the ground as hard as he could, almost to the breaking point, and launched himself forward. He was moving at a speed his Sharingan could no longer observe, but he knew his mark was right in front of him. The energy in his palm was as volatile as it was calm and the sight was as mesmerizing as it was disturbing. When his feet touched the ground again he was right in front of Obito, who had yet to even move. Briefly, Kakashi wondered if Obito could have been turned, if he could have gotten his friend back, but it was too late now as his right hand shot forward. The moment that it took to connect felt like a lonely eternity, every heartbeat shook his body like an earthquake, and just before the attack connected, Kakashi shut his eyes tight. Farewell, Obito. The whole world seemed to explode in white light and an ear-shattering whistling noise in the background of a massive thunderclap. Niji and Hinata were blown away by the shock wave. The older cousin was slammed into a slab of stone that stood in his path. Niji immediately shot to his feet again, his blazing Byakugan scanning the battlefield. His eyes widened when he spied what happened at the base of the tree. The base of the falling tree. Timber. Tayuya roared over the silence left in the explosion's wake and the massive tree began to tilt. At the same time, a blood-curdling scream echoed from the center of a crater not far from the tree. Niji could see Obito, at least the half of him that remained, afloat midair inches above the ground. Everything below his neck and the right shoulder was gone. He was bleeding profoundly and didn't seem to regenerate as sparks of residual electricity still shook his mangled body before he fell to the ground with a wet thud. He could see Kakashi, buried under some rubble, one of his legs bent at an odd angle, but he was alive. The sound of someone coughing behind him drew his focus onto Hinata, who was more or less trapped underneath some debris. "Lady Hinata," he shouted, obliterating the stone with a harsh palm strike, "we need to get away." He pulled her out of the rubble, dragging her after him as they stumbled through the cataclysm that surrounded them. "Now you've done it." Madara roared, afloat underneath the tilting tree in his Susanoo. "Now you've really done it." The bluish shroud expanded, its arms elongating and growing larger and larger with every second. The projectiles of wood and other jutsu that the first Hokage and everyone else was shooting up at Madara created a great plume of smoke, but didn't damage the Susanoo enough to stop the Uchiha. The huge, wing-like arms reached up to the tree and grasped it firmly. Just when Niji thought he would push it up again, Madara began to absorb it. The chakra from every splinter of wood that the tree had lost was disassembled into chakra and sought up into the Susanoo, which began to turn white in response. Even Obito's remains were disassembled and drawn up. The whole tree, as if it were made of some semi-fluid substance, was literally sucked into Madara. The only thing it left behind was the stump, in front of which Naruto, Tayuya and the fourth Hokage were watching the whole process with disbelief. He can't be fucking serious, Tayuya growled. How is that even fair? Naruto steadied himself against her side, his chakra already quick to recover. Thanks for that, fuzzball. The regeneration immediately cut off. Well, fuck you too then. His body shouldn't be able to contain that much chakra, Minato told them, brushing splinters of his shoulder, which dissolved into chakra midair and flew to Madara. Can't we just blow him out of the sky? Tayuya asked, gripping Naruto's forearm tightly. Unlikely, the fourth said. Hashirama and Hiruzen put a lot of power into their attack and he didn't even flinch. Can we even beat the fucker once he turned himself into a tree? It sounded rather unlikely to her. I could, Naruto said, but I didn't really have a chance to practice that. Practice what? Tayuya and Minato asked. Naruto's gaze was hard and empty, focused on Madara. Ninshu. The tree was gone in a flash of white light. Madara Susanoo, filled with the chakra of the tree and the 10 tails, retreated into his body and caused a similar transformation to Obito's. His hair turned white, his skin an even lighter shade of that, and a cloak in the very same color as his skin formed out of the chakra that coursed through him. Horns sprouted from his forehead and, most notably, he possessed both Rinnegan eyes. He had absorbed it with Obito's remains. In between the horn, a vertical slit was visible on his forehead. It wasn't clear what hid inside or what its purpose was, but no one had the time to wonder as Madara lifted one hand high above his head, a cruel smile on his lips, 2 Rinnegan eyes blazing with power. Slowly, deliberately he spoke, his crazed and gleeful smile stretching ever wider. Shinra Tensei. Tsunade was having a déjà vu. A very bad one. The last time she had heard this technique been called out, all of Konoha had been reduced to a hole in the ground with lots of rubble surrounding it. This time, it seemed to bury all of the alliance in its path underneath the uprooted stone. The wave of power crushed everything in its path. Some shinobi tried to push back against the attack, but it was in vain. Jutsu bounced off the gravitational push like tiny pebbles off solid diamond glass. Stone walls were crushed effortlessly, and even the Tsuchikige's effort to nullify the incoming attack ultimately had no effect at all. Tsunade caught a glimpse of the old man being knocked out, of Hiruzen's reanimated body crumbling, and of her grandfather's armor before she herself was swallowed underneath the wave of rubble and debris. Minato could barely reach Tsunade and Kakashi before the Shinra Tensei rolled over them. Naruto had in an eerily calm voice assured him that he would be fine, so he had left him and Tayuya behind. His body was failing him. It wasn't like he was falling apart just yet, but his joints were stiff, his chakra harder to control. The extraction of the Kyuubi had done a number on the artificial coils of his reanimated body as a whole. Are you alright? He asked, his voice breathless. Where is Naruto? Kakashi asked, struggling to his feet. The wave of power had ended some distance away from them and a cloud of dust had settled over the surrounding area. Minato could still feel the kunai Naruto had been carrying. It hadn't moved at all. Minato used his crumbling arm to point in the direction he could feel the kunai in. It was the very center of the crater. Is he alright? Tsunade asked, coughing harshly. I can only hope. The kunai he carries didn't move, so I assume he somehow blocked this attack. One hell of an attack it was. Aside from a tailed beast bomb, Minato had never seen anything half as destructive. How did he do that? Kakashi asked in wonder, wincing as he put weight on his hurt leg. Minato sighed, grimacing as he felt the control over his body dwindle. I don't know. I just hope it can help defeat Madara. Ninshu was, unlike ninjutsu, taijutsu, genjutsu and whatever the heck else kinda jutsu, not a combat ability. No, it was a way to connect to others with chakra. It was a way to be, a way to see and breath. Ninshu was a way to become more, to be one with the world at large. It didn't really boost your power, unlike Sage Mode did, it simply extended your horizon. But that was just it. That was what made it so indefinitely powerful. Naruto's body was in its physical height. He had chakra reserves that could only be increased if he fully absorbed Kurama, and his arsenal couldn't have been any more destructive unless he learned how to drop meteors on people. But with Ninshu, he was no longer Naruto. Not just Naruto. With Ninshu, Naruto would exceed himself, exceed his understanding of the world, and live and breath with it as one. He would transcend boundaries that would have been there otherwise. Sage arts allowed to become one with, or at least closer to, nature. Ninshu allowed to become one with the world. To do that, Kurama had told Naruto, he simply would have to let go. All of it. He felt at ease, even though there was destruction and death all around him. He was aware of the insignificance all this was in face of the greater whole. Living or dying, it made no difference to anything. The world would continue to revolve around the sun and men would live and die as they always had. Not matter what Madara would do, life would return to the soil under his feet. Naruto looked back at Tayuya, he felt her chakra, he saw her fear, her resolve, her rebellious mind. It was all there, for him to read. He let his eyes roam over the wasteland Madara had created. It was a shame, nature would need decades to reclaim this R. There were lifeless bodies everywhere, lost lives that were forever extinguished. His eyes, silver in color, slowly swept up to where Madara hung in the air. He could feel his anger, his crazed glee, his deranged ambitions. But there was also pain, sadness, loss. He struggled to contain a power that was not meant for men to control. The world was in imbalance. Naruto would rectify that. Focusing the whole world was not a feat his body was meant to endure. His mind did not possess the capacity to wield this power of gods and sages to its full potential, not even for a longer time, but it would be enough. Madara rapidly descended, so Naruto turned to Tayuya. This woman was important. Not to the world, not to destiny, not to the greater whole, but she was important to him. His mind was empty save the memories of his friends, of their support and her love, unspoken as it may have been. They were connected, she and him, so it was no surprise that she felt confused as all the information her mind received. She met his eyes, strong and unbroken, and his plea passed between them, unspoken. He could see that she didn't want to leave, but she knew that he couldn't do what he had to if she would be caught in it. As she retreated to where most of the life in this plane had gathered, Madara directed his gaze of stolen eyes to him. "And what did you do, little Uzumaki?" he crowed mockingly. It was strange, really. His mind was not able to waste processing power to form words. He didn't have anything left to feel angry, not even to feel offended. There was nothing but him and the world. As one. Madara didn't seem to care for his lack of response. With incredible speed he charged and threw a punch at Naruto's head. The Uzumaki blocked it effortlessly, almost lazily, by simply raising his hand into the attack's path. The very earth came apart behind him, but Naruto didn't even flinch. Madara didn't seem to be impressed and drew up his knee to nail Naruto right in the face. It missed by a hair's breadth as Naruto simply tilted his head to the side. Another blow, but Naruto was long gone before it even came close. He stood to Madara's left, casually, as if he had never been anywhere else. His silver eyes, staring straight ahead before they swept to the side to focus on his opponent. Naruto's knuckles drove into Madara's right side, tearing clean through the altered flesh and bone that made up the Uchiha after his transformation. Most of his body was obliterated, the shock wave of air that followed cut through the stone ground like a hot knife through butter. As Madara reformed a few feet away from him, Naruto eyed his left head curiously. It was utterly broken. Every bone had been shattered as he took his body past its limits and the skin had been torn off the back of his hand entirely. He needed to finish this fast, this body was not made to withstand the power of all and nothing. Before the Uchiha could halfway regenerate, Naruto's hand shot out and 3 fingers dug into Madara's left eye socket. A burst of almost white chakra shot through his skull and disintegrated the eye before Madara forced him to block a vicious kick, which he blocked, but didn't deflect. A bone in his right forearm almost broke under the strain. Madara growled at him. "What did you do? Where did you gain all this power?" He didn't answer. Instead he chose to manifest a chain of chakra. It appeared to be made off glass, completely transparent, but emitted a bright whitish glow. Naruto didn't even see the chain lash out, too fast for his eyes, before it had already pierced Madara's shoulder. But he had aimed for the chest, he noted. This was very hard to control and he couldn't afford to make a mistake. This power wouldn't be his to control for much longer. Force him to waste all the chakra, better yet, take it from him, Kurama told him, his voice a barely audible whisper in his head. Right. He should be able to control chakra, no matter which or whose it was. Naruto lifted his right arm and let his palm face Madara. The chakra was right there, the condensed mass before him. Like nature energy, Naruto should be able to command it and expel it from Madara's body. He was forced to duck low under Madara's leg before he could get a good grasp. "Whatever this is," Madara roared, having already regenerated, forcing him to block a brutal backhand, "you will not succeed. Dance. Dance forevermore." Naruto backed away and tried to grasp the chakra again, but he was forced to move again. "Hurry, your coils cannot endure this for much longer," Kurama advised, "your mind will collapse in itself if you don't finish this soon. Remember, my father could do this because he wasn't human in the first place." The taste of blood invaded Naruto's mouth. He needed to hurry. Whatever Naruto was trying, Tayuya could see that he wasn't getting a chance to do it. Damn it. She needed to do something, why did she even leave in the first place? Whatever the fuck he was doing, it was hurting his body. Tayuya. She turned around to see Kakashi and Minato hobble towards her. "Where the fuck you've been?" she demanded angrily. "Lover boy needs a hand." Kakashi, as messed up as he looked, straightened and closed his eyes briefly before the markings of his sage mode appeared on his face again. "What can we do?" he asked. Minato nodded and put a kunai into his mouth. Tayuya entered her own sage mode, turning her eyes into solid gold. "We need to get Lover Boy some time." Naruto was, despite his rather calm state of mind, growing desperate. His left leg was most definitely broken by now, and while Madara had wasted a lot of chakra already, it wasn't enough to stop him from regenerating. If only he had time to pull the chakra away from him. Madara's fist crushed his left forearm, and if not for the chakra reinforcing the limb, he surely would have lost it. Pain had no place in his mind, so Naruto took it in a stride, slamming his right shoulder against Madara's face as hard as he could. His collarbone didn't survive the impact, but neither did Madara's jaw. It was almost cleanly torn from its place, hanging limply on the skin and tendons of his left side, while only the right was still connected bone to bone. It would regenerate, but that didn't matter. Naruto took the chance and slammed his open right hand into the Uchiha's chest and grasped him, fingers digging into flesh. With an enraged roar, Madara brought his right elbow down on Naruto's left shoulder, almost cleaving it from his body. From out of the corner of his eye, Naruto could see Madara's other arm lash out at him, and he braced for impact. But it never came. Kakashi crashed into Madara's left side, a severely underpowered Chidori deflecting the blow off to the side. Madara's right arm lost its hand when Sasuke served it with his lightning-charged blade, and even when the crazed Uchiha tried to headbutt Naruto right in the face, Tayuya slung a chain around his neck and threw all her weight into pulling him back. His father, like a broken doll, threw himself into Madara's legs from behind, using his teeth to drive one of his kunai through both of the hollows of Madara's knees. The Uchiha fell backwards, and for a few seconds, Naruto had free rein. He met Tayuya's eyes for just a moment, one single moment that felt like an eternity 5 times over. He knew he couldn't even risk thinking about anything else but defeating Madara lest he'd liquidity his brain, but in this single moment, he couldn't have cared less. The potential of his failing was too high, the risk of losing everything looming over him. Naruto couldn't talk, but his mouth formed the words regardlessly. "I love you." And then he twisted his hand, still buried to the wrist, in Madara's chest. Sasuke was blown halfway across the entire battlefield when the chakra bottled up in Madara suddenly and most violently escaped from his body. A pillar of erupted from where he and Naruto had fought, a pillar of dense, almost white, chakra. Still midair, he watched as Tayuya unleashed a lightning fast chain right at Madara's head, who was somehow still conscious, but missed him by half an inch. Before he was slammed into the ground and incapacitated, he saw Madara tear Naruto's arm from his chest and feared the worst. Was this the world he was going to leave behind? This wasn't what Itachi had fought for, not what he had dreamed of. He told himself, before his head impacted harshly with the stone ground, that had failed. Not now, but long before, when he had turned his back on the only people that had actually cared for him. Maybe Itachi had been right. Maybe he was just a foolish little brother and never grew to be more. Tayuya spat out a mouthful of blood as she recovered from the blow. The healing tag on her shoulder at least returned the feeling into her legs, but fizzled out before it could get to fix whatever had happened to her shoulder. Rising shakily, she looked with blurry vision over to where Naruto should be standing. But he no longer was. He was on his knees, head thrown back as he screamed as his body failed him after exhausting himself with Ninshu. And high above, floating midair looking just about ready to drop dead, was Madara, his face smeared with the blood of his lost eye and a sizable hole in his chest that didn't regenerate, preparing to kill Naruto as from his hand a black sphere emerged and suddenly morphed, elongating into a blade that resembled a double helix and grew to unreal length. He pointed it at the kneeling Naruto. "Your fight is over, Naruto," he wheezed. "I will kill you, and with your death, the world is but one step closer to no true peace." And then he readied the blade, drawing his arms back and preparing to skewer Naruto, who struggled to move, choked gasps of air and blood escaping his throat. Tayuya looked around, searching for someone who would come and intervene, for someone who would stop. There was no one. They didn't even see it. Minato couldn't move anymore, and Naruto would die, because nobody was there to save him. No one but her. She scowled fiercely. That fucker would not take him from her. The chain she had shot earlier, the one that missed Madara by a hair's breadth, she pulled at it as hard as her broken arm allowed it. She needed to get to Naruto. He couldn't move, couldn't escape from Madara's blade. Tayuya wouldn't allow it, she wouldn't allow for him to die. Her elbow gave a sickening crack as it snapped completely when she reeled herself forward. But Tayuya couldn't feel the pain. She couldn't hear herself scream, nor could she hear the shouts and the fighting that still happened all around her. All she could hear was his heartbeat. All she could think about was that she could not take it to lose him, to lose the only one she ever had loved and ever would love. "You confuse me," he whispered. Around you I can't even think straight anymore. I feel like two different people. This boy, this loudmouthed idiot they know, and, he smiled ruefully. And the guy that flicks your forehead when you don't eat the veggies, the guy that silently watches you try, and fail, I might add, to prepare dinner and can't help but smile. That confused guy whose eyes are drawn to you, whose thoughts center around you, and, the guy that really fucking likes being confused by you. That idiot that calls himself your husband? She grit her teeth as she was dragged through the debris at the speed of a body flicker, as stones impacted with her legs and sides, but she ignored the pain and reeled the chain in even faster. It all happened so very slowly as Madara thrust the helix forward. Tell me again, she rasped, why I haven't fucked your brains out yet? Because, Naruto murmured into her hair, once I put a ring on your finger, no one can separate us again. And once that is established. He pulled her closer, his nails scratching down her back and his heat burning her up. Tayuya chalked on the air. You won't walk for days? Tayuya growled and bit down on his shoulder. I'll hold you to that, lover boy. If I can't make you break that promise? She bit her lip as her other arm broke against a spike of wood. Naruto had always protected her since she knew him, had always done everything in his power to keep her safe. And now it was time to do the same for him. You know. I love you. She halted mid-step, dropping the cinnamon roll. Slowly, carefully she turned to look at him. There was no goofy smile, no uneasy expression, no embarrassment, no regret. Just this small smile adorned his lips and her heart either stopped or just beat too fast to feel anymore, but Tayuya took a step in his direction. And another. And a third when she noticed she was crying. Huh, she made, voice so weak, so confused. She wiped them away but they just kept spilling and she didn't know why. His hand rested on her cheek, wiping away her tears. She looked up and saw him cry as well. Carefully she reached out and did like he had done, wiping the tears away. His smile widened a bit and he used his other hand to draw her closer. I love you, he said again, and before she could try and choke out a response, he kissed her and Tayuya poured all the feelings into it instead. She never mourned the lost cinnamon roll. In fact, she forgot she even had it. Her life for his. Love for love. Naruto couldn't do anything aside from glaring at Madara. The truth-seeker orb buried in his gut the moment the Uchiha broke free prevented him from forming any kind of chakra, prevented him from moving beyond small twitches and coughs. As Madara readied his final blow, all Naruto could do was watch in morbid fascination as the helix blade formed and shot forward to end his life. There was regret in his heart. Regret for only one thing. For that one promise that had remained important to him. That one promise he would fail to keep if he died now. All this could have been avoided if he hadn't arrived so late, if he had just moved a tad faster. Then he could have prevented the extraction of the other half of the 9 tails from his father. Then he could have stood against Obito and Madara. He could have been with Tayuya. No. He wouldn't give up. He was still breathing. And as long as there was even an ember of life left in his body he would not give up. Never. A roar of desperation rippled through him as he forced his body to take in every bit of nature chakra he could get. With no chakra of his own to balance it out, it immediately began to turn his arm into stone. With all that was left of his strength he raised his left arm and expelled it all against Madara. Time slowed down to a painful crawl, leaving Naruto to watch as his left arm disintegrated into atomic dust from the backlash of the orb he had just unleashed. The pure white sphere moved faster than Madara's attack but it would not save him. With this he could at least ensure that Tayuya would live. But deep down he knew that she would not be happy without him. That his death would hurt her more than anything else. And he couldn't do anything about it. A flicker of red invaded his vision and his eyes widened as he saw Tayuya shoot forward. Right into the path of Obito's attack. Her eyes were fixated on his, wide and fearful but brimming with determination. Naruto's heart stopped. He realized that Tayuya would barrel into him but still be skewered by Obito. And all he could do was watch. The explosion caused by Naruto's desperate attack, accompanied a crackling of pure energy, halted the fighting all around the impact zone, bodily throwing most of the combatants to the ground. The shock wave washed over all of the battlefield, encompassing it in bright light. When the dust settled, silence followed. Hiruzen's resurrected body was completely torn, the lower half missing entirely as well as his left arm up to the shoulder. He pushed himself up with a grunt and peered towards the center of the explosion. What he saw shattered his heart. Tayuya stood over Naruto, a big portion of what remained of Madara's helix blade still piercing her torso. She was bleeding heavily, the entirety of her right lung gone, as well as a good portion of her left. She fell to her knees with a bloody cough and all that Naruto could do was lean against her. His left arm was gone, all the way up to the shoulder, the right one still hanging in a twisted mess at his side. He stared into her eyes, watched in pure horror as the life drained from them. Tears threatened to spill from his eyes as he nudged her with his head, willing her to stay awake long enough for someone to heal her. But no one was coming, he knew. Tayuya was going to die. Her bloodied lips stretched into a labored smile. You, idiot. She coughed. Always, getting yourself in trouble. A laugh escaped her accompanied by a swell of blood. Don't talk. Naruto pleaded, trying to stand up but Tayuya's trembling arm on his shoulder kept him down. Please. You can't dash. Idiot, she breathed, more blood spilling from her mouth, the crimson liquid smeared his cheek. Shut up? I need to. Coughs racked her body and her legs gave out under her. She fell to her knees, the helix blade vanishing from her body, crumbling away into dust. Tayuya was on eye level with Naruto, staring directly into his tear-filled eyes. I don't know why I never told you, but I love you, Naruto. He had no chance to say the same, to tell her how much more he loved her, as Tayuya's head fell forward and her lip kissed his. The taste of blood invaded his mouth but he didn't care, he forced himself to pour every ounce of his love for her into the kiss and just as he found enough strength to raise his arm to pull her towards him. Tayuya fell away, her bloody lips leaving a trail on his cheek as she fell lifelessly to the ground. Tayuya frowned as she suddenly stopped her retelling. And what happened then? Sakura asked, not even batting an eye but rather looking perfectly serene. Tayuya shook her head, intending to resume her retelling. But she had no answer. What had happened? She looked out of the window, the sun gone entirely, leaving behind a black night without any stars and no moon to shine. A strange feeling gripped her as she looked back to her friends. I was struck, she said slowly. I told Naruto that I loved him and... Her face moved from confusing to something akin to fear. What happened? She asked. Karen smiled gently at her. You tell us, it is your story? Tayuya shook her head. I blacked out and then. She stilled and looked up into the faces of her fiends, none of them looking any older than they had in the memories of her story. Tayuya realized that the children were no longer there. Where is Mikoto? Shursui? Where are... She tried to push herself up but a hand on her shoulder pushed her gently back into the bed. Sakura chided lightly, you know why you are here, no standing up until dash. Tayuya slapped the hand away. What the fuck is going on? She screamed, confusion and fear mounting. Sari stepped to her side. You know what happened, Tayuya? No, she hissed, trying to move away from the girl. What is this? You can't speak. Sari can't speak. Who dash? Tayuya, Ino said, her voice just as gentle, just as eerie. Please, calm down. You know why you are here. Think a little. She violently shook her head as it began to pound painfully. No. I can't be dead. I'm pregnant for fuck's sake. Are you? The girls asked, their voices one and the same, as if the same person had spoken through several mouths at once. Tayuya froze. She was scared. Scared of these people, scared of looking down and seeing something she didn't want to see. But there was no other choice. Her eyes cast low and nothing. She was afloat, her lower body had long since crumbled away. There was no blanket, no bed, no wound. And no baby. Nothing. Tayuya was afloat in absolute darkness, her body falling apart. Had it been an illusion? A dream? A wish? A wry smile made its way onto her lips. She would probably never find out, but not for a single moment did she regret what she had done. Her life for his. Love for love. Something had died within him as she fell. The fire she had kept burning was gone without a trace, his will to fight had left him the moment her lips left his. The emptiness burned his heart, fueled a rage he had thought forgotten. The pain of loneliness tore at him. His dream had perished. What was a Hokage who could not even protect the one person closest to him? The failure of his aspirations didn't mean anything to him. His battle to acknowledgement had ended when Tayuya had accepted him. His dream of being Hokage became more than a childish longing. Becoming the leader of a village would have made him its protector. And then, when he had a family, protecting them, loving them had been all he wanted to do. And now? Now it was over. As the truth-seeker orb in his gut fell away into dust, his chakra flow returned and his healing factor kicked in. It was laughable. At this rate, he might even have survived Obito's attack. He could tell that his arm was gone for good, but he didn't care. It was just another hand that would never hold hers again. A shock scream tore from his throat as he threw his head back. No tears were there to be shed. No words could express his sorrow. Her life for his. Love for love. But Naruto never gave up. Not in the face of defeat, not in the face of death. He had been Konoha's #1 unpredictable ninja for a reason. Time to live up to the name. Her life for his. And then, his love for hers. Kurama, is that what you wish for? The fox asked. Naruto nodded. The smile on his lips was false, a brittle facade that hid his broken self. Yes. I beg you. You and I, Kurama spoke to him, have never seen eye to eye. Yet, you refuse to make me submit to you and I am grateful for that. You halted the resurrection of the wretched original and ended its Jinchuriki. You have done more than anyone ever had for my kind. The fox rose to his full height. Very well, it shall be as you wish. But bear in mind, you would not survive, Naruto. A smile no more real than the previous one. I know. So please, watch over her when I cannot. Do not say such things. Your mate will wring your neck for that. It was a real smile that graced his tired features. Yes, yes she would. Kurama allowed a smirk. No, she will, my dumb host. Be prepared. I won't be there to stop her. Without another sound, he was gone. And another light expired. Kakashi stumbled forward, his broken leg ignored as he cut his way through the debris. He had nearly stopped when he passed Niji's body but he needed to move on. Familiar faces greeted him left and right, all of them devoid of the spark of life. The crater Naruto had created with his last attack was vast, bigger than the explosion of the tailed beast bombs that the 10 tails fired off. Kakashi fell over the edge, stumbling a few steps down the steep ground. He saw that he wasn't the only one making his way to Naruto. Whatever was left of the third Hokage crawled through the dirt to reach for the boy he had once considered a grandson. Minato's remains lay not too far from his son, shaking and twitching silently in an effort to get closer. But the closer Kakashi got, the more he wanted to stop. What he saw tore at his soul, ate away at his heart. Naruto sat in the center of the crater, the lifeless body of Tayuya cradled in his lap. The ground around them was stained with their blood and the air felt heavier with every step he took. Kakashi couldn't see his eyes, and he didn't think he could ever muster the courage to look into them again. He couldn't look at the boy so broken and dead inside. A sudden rumble in the air had him tense. The temperature began to increase, gravity seemed to pull him down thrice as hard. Suddenly Naruto whipped his head back and screamed. It was an inhuman sound, a sound that Kakashi would surely never forget in whatever life there was left for him. The roar of a demon, a sound of pure pain and sorrow, deeper than any ocean. It howled over the wasted land, filled and weighed the heart of every survivor. Then the chakra hit him. It was like a whip of hot, foul wind and Kakashi remembered it all too well. It was the QB. With Naruto's broken will it tore through the seal like paper, rising into the air as a pillar of pure, blood-red chakra. But just as the beast completely left Naruto's body, the chakra curved on its way up and shot back down, towards the ground. Kakashi couldn't believe his eyes when the whole of the QB suddenly rushed into Tayuya's lifeless body. With a last flash of bright red, it was over. Naruto's body fell to the side. He hit the ground and lay face to face with Tayuya, both of them deathly still. Kakashi broke into a sprint, steadfastly ignoring the pain in his legs. He tripped over something just short of reaching both of them. On his knees he crawled forward and reached out to Naruto with his hand. But he was afraid to find him dead, afraid to have entirely failed his teacher, his student and himself. He pulled himself close enough to kneel over both of them. On first glance, Naruto was fine, aside from all the dirt and dried blood. But he wasn't breathing. Kakashi grit his teeth. And Tayuya? He had seen a lot during the war, and even more on his way over to them alone, so Kakashi could safely say that Tayuya was dead. But something was wrong. As much as it was revolting, so it was interesting. Underneath all the blood and broken skin, the guts and the flesh, Kakashi could see golden chakra pulse. It flowed through all of her body, even running down the length of her hair. And once it reached even her toes, it was all sucked back into her stomach. Kakashi watched in sheer amazement as a golden Uzumaki spiral appeared on her stomach. It gave a singular, powerful pulse before it began to spin madly, expanding rapidly to completely cover all of Tayuya's body. It was over before Kakashi even got the chance to see what the hell it did and left behind a fully healed Tayuya, her chest rising slowly. She was alive. Either by coincidence or a last desperate move, Naruto's hand was holding Tayuya's tightly. The spiral on Tayuya's body rolled down the length of her arm and just jumped over to Naruto, leaving behind a white Uzumaki swirl on her abdomen, just above the navel. Kakashi backed away, watching the same awe-inspiring process happen once more to Naruto. He was encompassed in the same light and once it was gone, he too, was breathing once more. From their joined hands, a small light emerged and scattered into the winds. The sky knew no stars. No moon would shine in this eternal night. A man who had watched, who had seen the sun even in the dark of the past, descended from heights unknown to mankind. The eyes of a god fell on his offspring, his creation. "Is this what you choose?" he asked him. Kurama smiled at the man. "I do as you told me. I trust in those humans." The man nodded, his Rinnegan eyes looking kindly down at the 9 tails. "You may never walk the earth again, my son. A laugh rumbled through Kurama. Don't be too sure. Naruto has proven to be pretty stubborn. Are you willing to sacrifice everything for those who chained you? No, Kurama asserted, I am willing to sacrifice everything for the one who sought to shatter my chains. It was her life for his. It was his love for hers. Just like it had once been their life and love for him, when the little fool had been born. And now, it was his life for their love. Tayuya blinked awake slowly and heavily, with limbs that could very well be made of lead, barely responding to her commands. Cammy, her chest hurt. Did someone punch her tits? The blinking barely cleared her vision, but it was dark, too dark to make out what was overhead. Wow. That had been a strange dream, to say the least. She turned her head to the side, the flames flickering besides her. Lover boy, she rasped. Her throat was really raw, she noticed. I had a fucked up dream just now. He groaned and moved, but Tayuya couldn't see, it was too damn dark. His hand touched her midsection, which was bare, she noted. Really, he croaked, was I in it? She laughed, which immediately became a rough cough. No. But, Sakura was there and Karen and Sari. Even Ino and, they had these bratty children. Wow, he hummed roughly into her shoulder. Say. I'm kinda missing my arm. Have you seen it? What? Your arm? She asked, her voice almost back to normal. The fuck did you do? I dunno, he slurred, sounding sleepily. Oh, maybe it blew up. You goddamn idiot, she laughed, rolling onto her side, once more reminded that her chest was really sore. Ouch, someone punched my tits. Naruto was close enough for her to see his tired blue eyes. Who was it? He inquired. I'ma punch his dick. With what? That missing arm of yours? Tayuya snorted, reaching out carefully for his shoulder. Just a few inches underneath the joint, it was a clean cut, apparently already healed and closed up. He chuckled. If I find it, I'll shove it down their throat? You said it blew up? Then I'll feed him the remains. You're an idiot. And you love me for it? She smiled, so why'd it hurt? Her heart beat strong in her chest, the pain no longer there. I do, she whispered, I do love you, Naruto. He kissed her softly, gently as if he feared it wasn't real. He pulled back before she could lose herself in it. She whined, causing him to snort. You promised something, he said. Did I? Yeah. A baby? She laughed. Can your crippled ass still put one in me? Wanna find out? Oh, of course, but not here. I mean, for all I know, I could be lying on the remains of your fucking arm. That's disgusting. Naruto pressed his forehead against hers. Since when are you so prude? Just get us out of here, lover boy. Can't, he confessed sheepishly. My legs feel like stone. That caused her to laugh. Same here. She kissed his nose and grimaced. Ugh, you taste like ash and a dead megalomaniac. A shower couldn't hurt, he admitted. Can you move at all? It didn't feel like she could. Maybe, but then I'd be cold. So no, I can't. He rolled his eyes but smiled. It was night, apparently. Not counting that weird-ass dream, the last time she had seen anything it was not even time for dinner. How long had they been out? You're awake. That was Kakashi's voice, and it had fucking surprised her, but she was too tired to be scared. Naruto groaned. Somehow. How do things look? Honestly? Like shit, Kakashi stated bluntly, but Madara is gone for good and it's all over. Oh thank fuck. Tayuya sniffed. Can we go home now? I need a bed. Now you really do look like a granddad. Minato, propped up against a stone, managed to laugh dryly before wisps of his own entrails escaped his mouth. He was falling apart for good. I guess I do, he wheezed, weakly blowing some air at his now gray-blonde hair. Naruto, who was to be supported by Kakashi to even stand, let himself fall heavily down at his father's side. We never really got a chance to talk, huh? He mused, looking at the ground. Minato chuckled weakly. I guess not. He coughed again. Ugh, then again, we never should have. I am dead after all. You're just a dunderhead, Tayuya huffed, sounding terribly sleepy as Karen let her down beside Naruto. She leaned heavily against him, closing her eyes. Bet you he got that from you. Hey, both father and son exclaimed at the same time. Minato shook his head, watching in mild fascination as his legs slowly began to turn into dust. No. He got that from his mother? He looked at the two of them. She'd be so very proud, you know? He laughed for a moment. And she would hound you for some kids on a daily basis, and stuff you with ramen till kingdom come dash? He was forced to stop, coughing harshly. Lover boy already takes care of that, Tayuya chuckled tiredly. Bet you he's simply eating her share as well? That might be entirely possible, Kakashi added, sitting down painfully at his mentor's other side. Iwai. Naruto protested weakly. I'm not that bad. Right? Right? Oh fine, maybe I am. But what can I do? Ramen is the best. Minato laughed, a raspy, labored-sounding noise. Oh no. Don't make me laugh. Geez, you're so much like you, mother, it should be a crime. He lifted his head with some effort, meeting Naruto's eyes, who was rapidly blinking tears away. He smiled, lips stretching until they cracked. I'm proud of you. Your mother is too, I know it. Naruto rapidly shook his head. I know. I'm Dash, he stammered incomprehensibly. He bit his lip hard enough to draw blood, forcing a smile that never undid the tears that fell freely from his eyes. Say hi to Mom for me. Might be quite some time before we see each other again. Whatever he had wanted to add, was swallowed by a sobbing noise that escaped his throat. I will, Minato promised, smiling weakly. His eyes moved to Tayuya, who had cracked one eye open to observe. He saw how tightly she was clutching his son's hand, how hard he must be squeezing back. Don't spoil him too much, yeah, he began before a huge crack appeared right in his face, splitting it right between the eyes. Minato struggled to continue talking. If he's anything like his mother Dash, he'll totally never get off your back, he joked, his attempted smile cracking his cheeks like brittle stone. Tayuya huffed, pushing her head against Naruto's with a bit of effort. He better don't, 'cause I'm not leaving anytime soon. Suddenly the process of Minato's ruin seemed to accelerate, wisps and pieces of his body cracked and fell away, disintegrating into the wind. Take care, you two, all of you. I'll see you all, in the next life. And as if this last goodbye had exhausted the remnants of his energy, Minato's body fell away into a cloud of white dust, which scattered into the wind, fading from sight not a second after. The way back to Konoha was arduous, strenuous and a horrible reminder of just how terrible this war had been. Not every chakra bomb that had been fired had also been blocked. Huge parts of the Land of Fire has simply been wiped off the map, villages had disappeared and forests had burnt to the ground. Naruto didn't want to hear about the death toll. He knew it was bad, very bad. In fact, he couldn't even sense half of the people that should have been there. But not only that, Kurama was gone as well. He hadn't felt this empty since Jiraiya had passed. The Kyuubi had been a constant in his life, even if an annoying and brash one. The fox had been there when no one else had been. Tayuya squeezed his hand, even while she conversed with Sari and Karen, who had thankfully survived this madness. In fact, all of the Konoha 11 were still here. And, of course, Sasuke. Naruto could see him be guided along the rest of them in between the hobbling Kakashi and the super-pissed Tsunade. Sakura, who looked like someone had tried to dye her hair red, was doing her best to heal both Kakashi and Sasuke even as they walked. Lee and Guy were walking back on their hands ever since Karen had healed them, though now she proceeded to scowl at them something fierce. Niji, Tenten and Hinata were with Ino, Shikamaru and Choji, all of whom had taken quite the beating with Madara's Shinra Tensei. Naruto was just glad they had made it at all. But that thought returned him to the loss of Kurama, to losing his father for a second time, in some way, and never even getting the chance to say thank you to Hiruzen for all he had done. They said goodbye to Gaara and his entourage of exhausted shinobi when they got closer to Suna, promising the Kazekage he would visit them soon. Killer Bee, who was not allowed to come anywhere near Tayuya or even allowed in her field of vision, had tried cheering him up, but ultimately failed and didn't even attempt to rap as they said goodbye as well. Naruto felt strange without Kurama's chakra inside of the, seal. Not that it had been a seal since he battled Nagato, more like a space the Kyuubi confined itself to. Again, Tayuya squeezed his hand, glancing at him from the corner of her eyes. The worry was evident, he could feel it. She was itching to say something, but didn't know what. So he smiled at her instead. It'll be okay, he told her and more so himself. Course it will be, she said confidently, bumping lightly into him. Not like I'd let you sulk all day anyways. The smile stretched a bit wider and he returned the gesture. Not like I expected you to, he said. It's just strange, you know? He's always been there before and now, he just isn't. Touching her neck, the spot the cursed mark had once occupied, Tayuya nodded solemnly. As weird as it is, I think I understand. She grinned at him, though it didn't reach her eyes. You know, even if he was a fucking bastard, the mark gave me power. Was pretty damn strange once it was just gone. She shrugged. But, well, shit was never mine to begin with. They traveled slowly, making camp almost every day and didn't cover much distance, but no one had the power left to sprint all the way back to Konoha, not even Guy would boat that much. 3 nights they had camped out, sleeping in trees and burrows created with earth manipulation, and were but a day away from Konoha at their current speed. Tayuya, perched beside him on the branch high above the ground, stared up at the moon deep in thought. What are you thinking about? He asked her, playing with the ring on her finger. Dunno, she replied, just wondering how this all would have ended if all that eye of the moon stuff succeeded. Tugging her hand closer to him, he hummed in thought. Well, a genjutsu, right? An endless one at that? Yeah, but isn't that just fucking stupid? She asked, scooting closer to him. He ensnares everyone in an eternal genjutsu, stopping war, sure, but he'd certainly basically doomed humanity, you know? Really? Naruto asked, frowning. Yeah, Tayuya nodded, turning towards him, whispering in his ear. You know, sex breaks you out of a genjutsu, not that you could have sex while being caught in one. So he effectively killed the whole future. Dumbass shit. They'd all grow old and die in the genjutsu. No children, no future. Huh, Naruto responded. That's stupid. She hummed into his ear. But, know that we aren't stuck in a weird-ass genjutsu, we can have sex, she whispered huskily. Naruto didn't get to voice his opinion before Tayuya had already pinned him against the trunk. Karen glowered at them the entire way back to Konoha. If I ever get hit by a pine cone again just because you can't keep it in your pants, I'll hit you, she threatened. And, just so you know, Sakura showed me how to put a lot of force behind these. She waved her fist at them for emphasis. Sari, walking on their other side, was almost twitching with silent laughter. Naruto just laughed nervously, raising the stump of his left arm in an attempt to scratch the back of his head. He blinked owlishly at it for a moment. He made. Gonna have to get used to that. So do I, Tayuya injected, almost sounding sour. It just ain't the same if only one hand's fondling my ass. A few feet ahead of them, Kakashi tripped over a tree root, Tsunade guffawed loudly and Sakura's neck turned red enough to rival Tayuya's hair. And then, from their left, someone laughed. Loudly, roughly, and almost hysterically. It sounded utterly unfamiliar and Naruto almost tripped over the same root Kakashi had fallen victim to when he watched Sasuke almost double over in laughter. I think he's lost it entirely, Tayuya whispered. That or he needs to get laid. Oi! Sakura! Come here for a second. The village was unharmed. Mostly. Well, there was this giant-ass hole right in front of the village gate, which had definitely seen better days. Couldn't have been any closer, Tayuya joked as they went around the crater. Naruto snorted, nudging her affectionately. If he kept this up, they wouldn't make it to the compound before she'd drag him to the next tree. When Tsunade tried to push open the closed gates, the whole structure gave one mighty groan before the two wooden doors simply fell inwards. The Hokage rolled her eyes. Let's just do this later, she sighed, turning to all of them. All right? I'm sure we are all tired, so all of you are dismissed. Over the next week I expect every jonin to show up in my office, clan heads included, and then we'll get the aftermath over with. For now. Tsunade didn't say anything more, just walked with a visible slouch into the village, where a crow was already gathering to greet them. Tayuya scowled at the people that came to celebrate their return. Do we have to? She asked Naruto. She caught him staring off into the distance. He was thinking about the fox again. Her question had startled him and he turned to her with a weak smile. Don't feel like it either. Come on. They found Karen and Sari berating Lee and Guy for their stupid exercising in their condition. Sari in particular seemed insistent on beating Lee's bushy eyebrows out of his face while she slapped band-aids on various scratches all over his cheeks and forehead. Karen glowered at Guy, viciously fastening a bandage around his shoulder with enough force to choke a rhino. And if I catch you so much as jogging, I will personally strap you into a hospital bed until even the bruising has vanished. Guy's youthful smile twitched, as if he had trouble holding it in place, and he nodded jerkily. And you? Karen suddenly turned to them. You should be resting. Not fucking at every turn. She snorted. You just need to get laid. I heard the Uchiha has a thing for Uzumaki. Her grin was almost feral at his point. Seems to insist on kissing them, too. She loved how Naruto always almost gagged at the memory. He suddenly pulled right into his face, to kiss it better, obviously. She complied gladly. If you don't stop this right now, I'll put a seal on both of you that renders you impotent? Karen growled, tying a fist-sized no onto Guy's shoulder. She gasped. You wouldn't? Try me. No one noticed that Sari had a strangely comfortable conversation with Lee, only using her hands. Coming home to the Uzumaki compound was something Naruto found hard getting used to. It was just so grand by comparison to his apartment. Thankfully the whole complex had been untouched by the war, aside from pieces of debris and cabbage. In the courtyard. My cabbages, it echoed from the neighboring market. Tayuya cackled beside him. He didn't get the joke. Letting himself be dragged towards the main building, he did wonder once more what became of Kurama. He was supposed to be immortal and all that. Did it make a difference if the fox offered his life up willingly? He hoped not. He was seriously missing the grouchy thing. Tayuya tore the door open, apparently offended that it dared to block their way, and dragged him inside. There, sleeping on the cushion Sari had produced some time ago, was the foxy Ninken they had never gotten to name. Tayuya had obviously overlooked it, making a beeline to the stairs and no doubt the bedroom with him in tow. He stopped her right besides the sleeping pup, which looked more like a fox than a dog, really. "We never named him," he said, crouching down. Tayuya leaned onto his shoulders from behind, putting all her body weight atop of him. The fox wanted to name him. Her hand found his almost automatically and he was grateful for it. Naruto wondered what he should name the fox kit. Kurama would feel wrong, not if there was still a chance for him to reform. Inu had been off the table long ago, though that had been Kurama's idea anyways. "How about Q?" he asked, pushing his head back to nuzzle Tayuya's neck. "What the fuck kind of name is that?" Really, it had been an answer Naruto expected. Just not from the small fox at his feet. He jumped, Tayuya included, almost up to the ceiling. Landing unsteadily and with wide eyes, he watched the little fox unravel itself from its sleeping position and dropped his jaw unceremoniously to the floor when 9 fluffy tails swished about, white tips instead of black, but 9 freaking goddamn tails. "No fucking way," Tayuya whispered into his ear. A sentiment Naruto could readily agree with. "Q," the fox said, the voice so young yet most definitely the QB's drawl. Offended drawl. "Did I miss a few brain cells when I repaired your head?" Crimson eyes lazily looked up to Tayuya. "Or did you truly fuck his brains out? On the way here? I'm almost impressed." He craned his neck around, to look at Tayuya, who was fingering the mark on her neck. It was pulsing softly. He watched the fox stretch languidly. How?" he asked dumbly. The fox huffed, a sound that was closer to a yip than anything else. "Do I really have to explain this? Can't you just be happy to have me back? Ungrateful human." It turned out that while Kurama would never walk the earth again, this little splinter of his chakra had never been included in the equation. The moment Kurama sacrificed all of his chakra to undo most of the serious damage done to Naruto and Tayuya, the essence of his being latched onto the next source of his chakra he could find. Which just so happened to be the Ninken/fox in the Uzumaki compound. Besides, Kurama drawled, the sound of his voice so young and almost smooth it made Naruto uncomfortable. "I'm hungry. The food here is terrible and it's been a few millennia since I last ate. So, let's get some steak, huh? I prefer veal myself but wouldn't say no to lamb or pork either." Just like that, the fox sauntered in the direction of the kitchen, leaving Naruto and Tayuya staring after him. "You know," Tayuya spoke up after a minute of stunned silence, "that almost put me out of the mood." "Really?" she snickered, suddenly sinking her teeth into his neck. He hissed softly as she placed the hickey of the century all over the side of his neck. "Only almost," she hissed against his skin. "Leave the baby fox to mess up the kitchen. You, lover boy, have other things to mess up." She drew closer to his ear, her breath so hot it almost burned him. "Namely, me. You." He shuddered at that one. How did he deserve her again? She'd been sitting in this bed for an hour now. Idly, she wondered when he would come back. Setting her book aside, she looked out of the window. It was getting dark outside, she felt it was time for lunch. But her musings were stopped when her sensitive ears picked up the coming storm that brewed, or better yet, marched through the hallways. "Oh fuck no." Sighing, she braced herself for what could only be the longest evening in her life. Damn being bedridden. The door was kicked off its hinges and smashed hard into the white tile floor of the hospital room, followed by a startled scream from the doctor outside and the man who had put her in here in the first place. Expected something else. "Tayuya," he wheezed, looking as if he had sprinted all the way from Suna to Konoha. Which was, Tayuya mused, entirely possible, given that that's where he was supposed to be at the moment. She waved lamely at him. "Hey there, lover boy. What brings you here?" "What?" "You dash. Hospital," he shouted and almost jumped onto the bed when he came to her side. Tayuya laughed. "And whose fault is it I'm here?" she asked, barely containing her wide smile. "How are you? Anything hurt? Did Sakura hit you again?" he asked, rapid-firing his questions. "I swear to Kami, if she hit you I will exile her flat ass." "Calm down," she laughed, "I'm fine, just fat." "You are pregnant, not fat, Tayu," he said with a sigh. "Isn't that the same thing?" He groaned and buried his face in the mattress right next to her. Tayuya ran her hand through his short blonde hair. Gods, why was it so soft? "How long do you have?" he asked, his voice muffled through the mattress. "I'm going to die in 3 hours." He turned his head and glared at her, though she could catch the glimmer of honest fear on his eyes. Huh. She flicked his forehead. "Start asking the right questions, daddy to be in about a day." "A day?" he exclaimed, jumping almost up to the ceiling. "The nursery isn't even dash. I need to buy diapers." Tayuya laughed and pulled him back onto the mattress, bringing his head gently to rest on her heavily pregnant belly. He stilled immediately. It's fine, the Scarecrow and Tsunade got everything arranged. He didn't say anything, obviously intent on hearing something from his little spawn. He smiled suddenly and Tayuya knew why. He had felt the little one kick. She kicked, he said, giggling like a child. Yeah, she's gonna do that for the rest of your life, lover boy, she said, rolling her eyes. He smiled so widely at her, it must have hurt. I know, he said excitedly, and I'll love her all the more for it. The look in his eyes made her smile as well, and suddenly she felt like crying. God damn it, these fucking hormones. Get over here, lover boy, she ordered, pulling him up so he would lay down at her side. She tried not to move too much and buried her face in the crook of his neck. He gently drew circles on her stomach and she tried not to sob. Eventually a sniffling noise escaped her and he immediately stopped. Are you okay? He asked quietly, his and gently cupping her cheek. She sobbed loudly this time. Of course, she chalked out, wiping her eyes in his neck, it's just, the damn hormones. I am too fucking happy, it makes me cry. She sniffed. Bullshit. Naruto laughed quietly. Then I'm glad. And she sobbed again. God, fuck you. Stop making me cry. It's stupid. He laughed, deeply laced with content before kissing the top of her head. I love you, Tayuya, he whispered. She slapped his arm, well, the half that remained. I told you to dash, her voice cracked and she mewled. Fuck. Gods. I dashed. Tayuya pulled back so she could look him in the eyes. I love you, you stupid idiot, now stop making me cry or I will throw you out of the room. He kissed her, Tayuya cried even more, but she never threw him out of the room anyways. Mama. Mama. Ma. It could have been such a nice morning, Tayuya mused grumpily, but she just had to have children. 4 of them, no less. Why did she let that happen again? Right, her husband was a horny, over-fertile, sex god. That was all nice and good, but after the 3rd child the cons had evened with the pros and the 4th had just tipped the balance in their adorable favor. Groaning and still half asleep, Tayuya rolled over in bed and groped for the 2nd pillow that was supposed to be somewhere in front of her, or under her dumbass of a husband's head, until she found it and quickly pulled it over her own head. Judging by the startled breath coming from besides her, it had evidently been underneath Naruto's head. Wah-dash, he mumbled, dazedly. Tayuya cracked an eye open to watch him fumble with the mattress underneath his head as if the pillow had somehow been sucked into it. Daddy, all 4 of them crowed once they realized their dad was awake. Tayuya was rudely startled out of her satisfied dozing over having shifted the brat's attention to her unfortunate husband when the mattress dipped low right behind her, forcing her body to roll onto her back. Damn it, she hissed when a sun ray hit her face. Why are you flunkies even awake? She huffed at her brood, covering her eyes with both of her forearms. Damn it, mommy, her oldest huffed from where the mattress had dipped. You promised us strawberry pancakes. The girl was like the perfect blend of her and Naruto, though her hair were a red so deep and intense it put the thickest of blood to shame. Now if only she weren't such a glutton with just barely 9 years. Bet you she reminded them of the pancake thing. Yeah. Pancakes. Pancakes. The hardcore enthusiasm belonged to the 2nd, 7-year-old daughter, who had either inherited Naruto's boundless energy or simply came to be the opposite of her lack of motivation for most things, aside from making babies, apparently. Then again, she had Naruto's blonde hair, so it was most definitely his fault. I want chocolate. As deadpan as a 5-year-old could possibly be, her 3rd daughter seemed to decisively pout at the entirety of all existing things. Aside from chocolate, of course. A bit timid, perhaps, but woe betide thou if a cat got close enough to be petted. Now they had 3 cats and wouldn't dare claim one had run away. Kurama was sufficiently annoyed to share his food. Duh, it came from right sides her. The youngest was just 2 years old and so very adorably that Tayuya could not bring herself to ever be too far from the tiny redhead with the shiny blue eyes. She was just about to cave in and lift tiny baby Haku up onto the bed when Naruto shifted to reach over her, nicely pressing against the entire length of her back. With the way her heartbeat hummed for his touch, Tayuya wouldn't be surprised to have a 5th child. Maybe a boy at last. Baby Haku was lifted over her head and Tayuya took the opportunity to capture Haku's feet, producing some overbearing mock growl while she tickled them a bit. The girl shrieked loudly, laughing and babbling. Nah, she squeaked. To save me. The other girls joined the fray, trying to save their baby sister from the red monster's clutches, which merely amounted to all of them smothering Tayuya with their weight, basically burying her in red and a bit of blonde. I give, she laughed, blowing a strand of blonde hair out of her mouth. Off me you brats. Hey, Naruto injected, pushing the red hair of their eldest, Hinori, out of Tayuya's face, his sparkling blue eyes meeting her violet ones. She smiled up at him, not even able to scowl playfully at him. He grinned. Leave some for me. the three older girls made once he had leaned down to kiss her. Haku merely gurgled excitedly from somewhere in Naruto's lap. Mom. Pancakes. You promised, you know? Straight to the point was just Fukai's thing, even if she was just 5, and Tayuya blamed the entirety of that on the one time they had Kakashi babysit her. And now they had a hard-ass daughter and Haku shortly, 9 months exactly, thereafter. But Tayuya couldn't, for the life of her, count that as a loss. She just lorded her wonderful spawns all over Sakura's measly twins. Tayuya didn't let Naruto pull back when he tried, she let the kiss last, long enough to make her second daughters, Tsukuyo's, who had been named after Karen's mother, terribly non-existent patience slip. Mum, she bemoaned loudly. I want pancakes. Quiet, Hinori shushed her little sister, maybe they get out of bed once they stopped eating face. The blonde girl pouted. Just 'cause Uncle Kashi told you that, don't mean it works. That stopped Tayuya short. She pushed Naruto up, who grinned down on her like an idiot, and tried her hardest to look intimidated, freshly snogged and buried underneath her own children. Still, Hinori and Tsukuyo were sufficiently cowed by the stare. The odd uncle told you what? She asked, trying to ignore baby Haku as she ambled from Naruto's lap onto her chest. Hinori, despite being the oldest, was probably the worst liar of them all. Even the baby managed to look convincing, even if she had eaten the cookies. Nothing. Tsukuyo chirped, grinning like the biggest ditz out there. He didn't tell us you'd need a lot of kisses and licks to be distracted enough to dash. The blonde girl was promptly shut up by Fukai's flat hand. Tsu. No rambling. Tayuya let her head fall back into the pillow. Damn that Cyclops. Never, she said aloud. That silver-haired perv won't get near my daughters again. Naruto rested his head on the pillow beside her, idly toying with Haku's red hair, which she found far too interesting and therefore stopped trying to tear off Tayuya's shirt. You know, it was your idea to dash. You agreed, she interrupted, blowing a bit of air into his eye. And now look at us. 4 of them. Pushing his head against hers, Naruto hummed lowly. I didn't hear you complain. Are you trying to have even more children? She asked incredulously. He shrugged, propping himself up on whatever remained of his left arm, waggling his eyebrows at her. Wouldn't dare. Tayuya glared half-heartedly at him before huffing. She sat up, cradling little Haku to her chest. Fine, she said, pancakes with strawberries dash. And chocolate, Fukai injected evenly, slipping off the bed. And chocolate, yes, Tayuya added, rolling her eyes and slipping off the bed herself. Then we get Kakashi and beat his ass. After that. She slipped off the bed, the shirt she wore just barely covering her behind. We'll see about what you dare or not, love. She threw him a smoldering gaze over her shoulder. And I dare you a boy? Tayuya sashayed her way out of the bedroom, dragging her brood with her, and was pleased to note that it took Naruto almost 5 full minutes to follow them.